You ready? You're all ready.
Ready to go?
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 2021 full board meeting for Manhattan Community Board 4. My name is Lowell Kern. I'm the chair of MCB4. We are holding this meeting remotely via Zoom, available also on YouTube, where the recording will be stored under authority from the state legislature and Governor Kathy Hochul. We are starting off tonight, the first item of our agenda, as we've been doing periodically. We've invited the commanding officer of one of the police precincts that covers our community district to come speak to us about what she is seeing in the district and answer questions if she's brave enough, and I know she is. So we'll start this evening with Deputy Inspector Megan O'Malley, the commanding officer of the Midtown North Precinct. Deputy Inspector O'Malley, the floor is yours. You need to unmute yourself, though.
Good evening, everybody.
There we go.
Hope this finds you all well. We talked about it earlier for anyone who was on the business recovery meeting or any community council meeting anywhere in the city in the past 2 years, although I think it's a statement that should be said ever. We can talk statistics all we want, but the reality is that we're concerned with perception, right? If you're going to buy a house or an apartment and move into a neighborhood, you look at crime stats, but you walk around and you take a feel for the neighborhood and you think, do I want to live here? Do I have a good vibe? Does this feel safe? What we're hearing overwhelmingly throughout the command and not just within this community board is, people want to see more police. They want to see them visible. They want to see them on their blocks. They want to see them on foot. Everyone's been very appreciative of all the work that we've been doing and very supportive, which we appreciate. And, there are different obstacles in 2021. So just crime statistics, if you were to look at it, from a 1 year perspective, this is, through October 31st of 2021 compared to October 31st of 2020, that same year, that same week of the year. Crime is up 2%. That is not even 100 crimes in this command. That includes larcenies. So this is, which is always our largest crime number driver. That's your fraudulent identifications. That's someone using your credit card, even though it's somehow still in your pocket. That's someone cloning your ATM cards, things like that. It also includes grand larcenies, unattended property, which city bikes, although it appears they're giving them away every time I look, love to be stolen. Unfortunately, they're left unattended and they are stolen and they eventually return, in other parts of the city. But the renter is forced to come make a report and, make sure that their account is clear. So we're seeing several of those unattended e-bikes, whether it's a delivery person running in to, drop off a delivery or pick up a delivery, or just a bike that's chained to the pole, those are being stolen as well. So these are all included under the grand larceny category, as well as like grand larcenies from person, which are, a purse snatch, a chain snatch. We really haven't seen many of those, fortunately. Burglaries for the year, we remain down both year to date and in the past 4-week period. We're down in every other category aside from grand larcenies in the 4-week period. Understandably, if you look at the year period, we have seen an increase. We're talking about a pandemic period. So what I like to do and what we do by and large here in the department this year is do a 2-year analysis to say, hey, this is what crime looked like 2 years ago when we had a thriving Midtown and Hell's Kitchen. So in comparison to that, for the year, we are only up in burglaries. We're up a raw number of 30 crimes. And within burglaries, there's your commercial burglaries. We did have a pattern along 8th Avenue, probably 24 incidents. That perpetrator, who was a parolee and was wanted for prior crimes, was recently arrested. He's currently in jail on a parole warrant. We've seen an increase in stolen automobiles, about a raw number of 15, which translates to about 36% for the year. In the past 4 weeks, we're just slightly up in every category. A little bit up in grand larceny of vehicles. Like I said, that's a number of 3. Overall grand larcenies, a row number of 5. Burglaries, a row number of 2 increase. And again, burglaries also include you had a package delivered or your neighbor had a package delivered. It was left, wherever you leave packages within your building, whether it was at the mailbox or in the mail room, and it was stolen. If we believe, and we almost always do, that somebody who did not have permission or authority to enter that building came in and stole that package, oftentimes there's video, and we're very grateful for that. So thank you to all the property managers out there and owners. We're able to establish that as a burglary. So they're not, I don't want people to have in their heads like, oh my God, someone's climbing in my fire escape at night here. We really haven't seen many residential burglaries at all in the past few months. Felony assaults, which is assaults that result in a serious injury or with a weapon. We're talking an increase from 7 crimes 2 years ago to 8 crimes this year, so 1. And robberies, there's been an increase of 3 raw incidents. Again, this is a 2-year comparison over the past 4 weeks. And again, robberies include shoplifters who, when confronted, then utilize force or make a threat of force or a statement which threatens, the challenging person or sales clerk. So again, statistically, on paper, everything looks great. I'm sure if everything felt great to everyone, we wouldn't be having so many of these conversations. So.
Anything else you want to share with us, Deputy Inspector?
No, I'm sure it'll come up in the questions.
All right, I've got 4 hands already. I'm going to take them in the order they came up. David Warren, you're up first.
Hi, good evening, Deputy Inspector. Thank you for coming in for your report. So you mentioned, bike thefts and electric bike thefts are up and things like that. What are you doing to combat that and to retrieve the bicyclists and also prevent the bike thefts? Maybe secure bike parking. What is happening? I mean, I'm a cyclist, so if I lose, I've had a bike stolen. I don't care. I don't have a necklace. So I mean, what actions are you taking, or what are you doing about it?
I guess a good question is, where do you park your bike?
Well, I mean, I'm okay, but I'm saying the bikes that have been stolen. I'm lucky enough to park inside my building, but I mean, years ago.
We would recommend, so we have a crime prevention officer here, Officer Ray Gregg. Fortunately, he's not here tonight. We have some events going on, but he is available. What we encourage everyone to do is participate in our bike etching program. And what it is each command has, tools that you can etch in a unique identification number. It's serialized, and we keep a record of it. And this way, if your bike is found anywhere within New York City, with the New York City Police Department, we can trace that bike back to you. In terms of crime prevention tips, I would recommend, like I recommend with all things, do not leave property unattended. If you're going to go into a store to pick something up, lock your bike up. Just like I would say, don't leave your car running. Things like that. It takes, if you YouTube it, it takes less than 30 seconds to crack a bike lock. So I probably wouldn't leave my bike chained to a parking pole, overnight. What do we do in terms to combat it proactively? Our officers are aware of it. They're aware with several offenders that we have that are known bike theft recidivists. We try to get as many high visibility foot posts out as we can. But I think, we all walk around these streets. We know there's bikes all over the place. And if they're unattended, we don't know that the person who's picking it up and riding it away is not, the intended owner.
All right, thank you. I want to jump in here before I move on to the next question. I have been told that I have addressed you incorrectly, that you are now Inspector O'Malley. There was a promotion there that was not even reflected in your Zoom screen name, but I want to make sure I'm getting it right.
Yeah, that was back in March. Thank you.
It still says DI by your name, so that's what I was going with.
I think that was entered by whoever sent me the link.
That's my,
link.
All right.
I don't know how to edit it.
We will
Sorry.
correct it, and we apologize.
My
And want to give you the
apologies.
proper due, Inspector.
It's
Um,
okay.
I'm also going to just note for the board that I'm going to cut off the questions after Marty DeCat. So we're going to do the 5 people who have their hands up just in the interest of time. Mike Noble, you're up next.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for coming, Inspector. It's great to see you. The more we see you, the better we all feel, the more safe we feel. I just wanted to tell you something about the perceptions of what goes on in the neighborhoods here, Chelsea and all. The stats you read out, are not so bad. Yeah. If you own the Citizen app, on the other hand, you're going to feel like you shouldn't be walking out your front door. Okay. Now, I haven't kept tally, but I just might do that from now on. Every single time I see a crime reported on the Citizen app, I'm going to mark it down, and I'm going to compare it to what I hear, revealed to the public, because it sounds a whole lot worse than what it is. Now, do you folks look at that thing? Is there someone in the precinct who actually looks at it?
No.
No.
Because Citizen is not an NYPD or a New York City technology app. That is user driven. So it's tantamount to, we all use Waze, right? For maps,
Yeah.
and how to get around and stuff. We don't record collisions based on Waze. Someone's perception of how long something is, a lot of the drivers, while they're sitting in traffic, entering their data into Waze, there's not really a scientific GPS approach other than it feels like 10 minutes, but maybe it's 10 minutes, but it feels like 25 because my kids are in the back screaming. Citizen has pros and cons. It's a great way to monitor what you think is going on. It's a great way to see sort of what your neighbors might think is going on. But here's a perfect example. And this is something citywide we've had. I've had it in prior commands outside of Manhattan as well. So it's sort of generated of scanners, like 911 monitoring devices and applications, right? So there's people who can listen to our radio frequencies through various existing applications. And they'll hear, say, a burglar alarm at a bank, right? So it's an alarm. We have a lot of accidental trips during the day. That often gets translated onto Citizen as a bank robbery, like an armed bank robbery. I had it myself. I was walking down Court Street, while working, and I couldn't figure out, you sense something in the air that's like something is not right. And then, my phone starts ringing and it's like, oh my God, there's a gunpoint robbery of the Capital One over there. I was like, there's definitely isn't. I'm here, and it was an accidental trip. But people will enter things on it just the same way, Twitter is an interesting application, right? It's an incredibly loud voice for a small percentage of the overall world population. If you're an avid user of Twitter, you can almost live a separate existence than you do in real life, right? Where online people can tell you what's up and what's down. And then, you walk out into the real world and there's a place for it, right? So you monitor what goes on Twitter, but do you take all your information from there, all your cultural beliefs from Twitter? If you're in the right algorithm, you'll believe that any political thing is true, no matter what side or what you're in. But with regard to Citizen, it's user data driven. It's not NYPD data driven. So while I'm straying from the point, I'm just trying to say people's definitions of assaults, and I don't mean comparatively with the New York State penal law. We had that conversation earlier today in another meeting. But people's general categorizations of things is different from the New York City Police Departments and other people's perception of it. So we have a lot of good community support. We have a lot of good community partners. We rely on them to let us know, hey, people are buzzing about this. It doesn't seem to be a reported incident to you. Do you know about it? Can we put you in touch with these people? So what we want is to report things. We want you to use the 311 system. We want you to call 911 and say, hey, there is a person over here that I think is a danger to him or herself and others. We want to know about these things so we can react to them. We cannot be everywhere at all times. And similarly, if you have questions about like things you've seen on the Citizen app, I encourage you to give us a call. I'm not saying that you're waiting for this meeting, but sometimes at our community council meetings, which are held on Tuesdays, once a month, we hear about something from 3 weeks ago. We have a really, I think, well-known community affairs unit, Detective Dugan, Officer Bellantoni. Like I said, recently we have Officer McGlynn joined, and Officer Greg is helping us out with crime prevention. They're incredibly responsive. So when we hear about incidents, like we often go seek out the person that we think is involved to see what information we can get. I understand not everybody wants to make a report. For some people, just the experience itself is traumatic enough, or they may not think it's severe enough to rise to our attention, or maybe they've had past negative interactions with us and they don't feel that, it's worth their time, which is something we are wholeheartedly trying to change within this department. I'm sure you've heard it in the press. We're really trying to improve our customer service sort of reputation and operating procedures there.
Inspector, if I could jump in here for 1 second, Mike. You mentioned, the staffing and some of the great people you have at the precinct. But in terms of numbers, are you down officers at this point, or detectives, or do you have a full complement right now?
Oh, we are down. We are definitely down.
Is it impacting your ability to deliver service, or is it temporary? Is it,
I've been assigned here for about 13 months, and it's been a personnel deficit since prior to my arrival. Again, like numbers, any numbers, right? We all talk about, you can kind of, I don't want to say spin, that has a negative connotation, but if our allocation was, our head count was a certain number 3 years ago, and somewhere in the office that makes allocations, they decided this year or last year, that's not necessary, you could do more with less, then obviously the percentages that another office may pull up and say, oh, their deficit is only this much, whereas I can give you like a raw head count of what that deficit is. I wouldn't say it's impacting our ability to deliver service. We come out every day and we deliver, service to the best of our abilities. Do I think that we could certainly serve the community better with more officers? 100%, absolutely. Without a doubt. So we would welcome many more officers. We're nowhere near the staffing levels that we were at, say 4 or 5 years ago.
All right, thank you for that, Mike. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No. I just want to thank you again. That's a wonderful response to my question. I'm going to just reiterate. There are times where these incidents happen, and they're on video. I mean, these things are being recorded. Yeah, you got 12 cop cars, the whole thing around the city, and it gives one pause to about going out of the house. And it's happened right in front of my building on 10th Avenue. I must tell you, I said, my son, don't go outside right now. There are cops out there, there's fire, whatever. And it works. So the thing is valuable. The question is whether you want to subject yourself to the kind of stress that this app produces. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I definitely do, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure there are people on this very board who I've talked to who've given the app up because it's just too stressful. On the other hand, if I knew for sure that the precincts were going to respond, whether it be precincts or PSA4 or whatever, I could put the thing down and say, we're covered, we're safe, okay? I'm not there yet. I'm going to do this little analysis. And if you come back next month, I'm going to present it to you, okay?
All right, Mike, we got to move on.
Good. Thank you,
We're a
Mike.
half hour in already. Christine.
Thank
Yes, Inspector, good to see you. I want to tell you that I've received very glowing reports about Mike Dugan's help on your street for various issues related to the neighbors. And so I wanted to mention that and thank you for that.
Thank you very much. He's an amazing guy. And he's always willing to lend his experience, and he's building, a really solid unit back there. I say back there, I'm sorry, that's their office is behind mine.
Thank you very much. Carrie.
Hi, thanks so much for being here. Real quick, I'm a mom to two teenage girls, 14 and 16. One goes to Beacon High School at 522 West 44th, and one goes to PPAS at 328 West 48th. Both of those administrations have sent home multiple letters about young women from going from school and back being harassed, assaulted. Language in these letters has included like, don't use pepper spray because it's illegal, but you should definitely have a rape whistle. So I guess I just want to, since you're here, I'm really glad you're here. I would like if you could speak to that and what you're doing to work with the schools in the district.
You can just, I just want to look up one quick thing on something before sorry.
I mean, I just want to add that, you know, those are two schools in Hell's Kitchen, of which there are how many? So if it's happening there and I'm getting two letters from two different administrations, it's definitely happening to other young women going to school.
So again, this is something that we haven't been contacted of. That's why I don't have the knowledge of this letter. Usually when something like that comes out, I mean, I'm aware that you have it now, but
you know, schools say you have that they're working with the police. So
I'm sure they're working with the police in these topics. I'm sure that it was pretty obvious in my face that that was kind of news to me in terms of this, because we have just in general prior to the school year kicking off, and we've revised it since. We have every day there's a school dismissal plan, and it revolves around corridors, you know, certain schools where the bulk of the where the bulk of the students travel to transit hubs, and we have that in various areas of command, whether we're talking about, you know, closer to, you know, 56th Street or further down, and then, you know, going eastbound to the train stations. We do have two youth officers, Officer Froelich and Officer Gonzalez. They've replaced, when the department went over to the, when they implemented the neighborhood policing philosophy, and we've adapted many things to that, and it's been about 5 years, it's not new. What we formerly had was what we called school teams. And this was like a squad of officers, anywhere from like 4 to 6 cops, depending on the size of the precinct, that worked in the schools all day. They just went from schools to schools because, as you know, there's a tremendous amount of schools in certain areas of the city. We're one of them, you know, and so between just medical calls or calls for, you know, children who are having sort of like an episode of some sort, or unfortunately active violence or active crime, theft, you know, those are, I don't want to say time consuming, like it makes it sound cumbersome, but I mean, those are extensive calls for service, and it helps to have the same officers specialized in them. That's what I always found the value of the school team to be. The same people, they know the teachers, they know the children, more importantly, like they're used to dealing with the same children. And those were phased out. And instead now every command only has 2 police officers that deal with youth issues. And so where the department's sort of response is that patrol officers should have that same sort of relationship with schools. They should also know the children, and that's part of like the steady officers being assigned to the same area every day. So I'm going to speak to the sector officers that are assigned to these schools to find out if they were aware of it, or if, like I said, the youth coordination officers were aware of it. It's unusual that something wouldn't rise to my attention involving schools, especially something of that nature. But do you have, I mean, I don't want to like get too detailed into it on here. Is it harassment by like other students, or
No.
by like maybe apparently undomiciled people, or
Potentially, but
vulnerable,
people on the
maybe?
street, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, adults.
Okay. That's something I'll look into. I don't know if they're looking at specific people, or we haven't had any assaults that I'm aware of in our, you know, both of these schools are in Midtown North and they're here. I'm unaware of anything of that nature, like an actual assault. And then, no, it's okay. You know, but could it have been something harassing, or maybe someone was far too close in someone's personal space that, you know, especially if I was that age, I would consider an assault. So it may have been documented as something different, and I'll take a look at it. But if you could send your info to Jesse, or And then maybe I can follow up with you direct. I'd like to do that.
Thank you very much.
We can do that.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
Katie, you're up.
Thanks, Inspector O'Malley. In fact, I have a question that's slightly similar to the question that Carrie just asked, but I am on the Social and Racial Justice Task Force of Community Board 4. And one of the issues that's come up a variety of times, and it sounds like you say that you've also heard it from other places, is great public interest in foot patrols. And we've heard mention that that's also, it's certainly a budget issue, and you mentioned that you're down people. I guess I'm wondering, can you just tell us, where would the decision be made? Do you make it locally, or is it a decision at a higher level about whether or not you can assign budget in such a way that you could have foot patrols done? Or what if the community wanted more foot patrols, would we have to sort of petition somewhere else?
In order for us to return to kind of a place where people are saying like, hey, you guys, so, like there's an officer on my block, or an officer, assigned a couple of blocks away, we would definitely need more officers assigned to this command. What we put out, when I say put out, there are 3 report times each day, standard report times, about 7 a.m., 3 p.m., and around 11 p.m. at night, where we deploy officers. And those are the officers you typically see, in marked uniform patrol cars. I'm curious, how many police cars do you think we have within the command on any given 8-hour thing, like in any 8-hour given tour, like answering 911 calls? Anybody? I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I'm just curious.
2.
12.
10?
6.
All right, good. All right, so 6 is closest, right? 12 is probably closer to what we should have and what we need to perform with, and those are guidelines. So what that impacts is 901 calls, right? So we know, we don't like to be simply reactive. We want to be proactive, right? We want to be out there looking for trouble and looking for ways to improve public safety. Oftentimes, and I don't want to sound defeatist and I don't want to sound lazy, so I just want to get ahead of that. We're reacting, we're what we say, chasing the radio. We're responding to 911 calls. And then, in between those, we're looking at 311 calls, which are also incredibly important. And, there's suggested, timeframes that for different things that we need to attend to. Remember, 301s range from anything to graffiti to illegal parking, but I can't get out of my garage. I'm trapped here. There's a very timely nature to these things as well. So we don't, I'll be honest, I would love to have officers on foot, more officers on foot. We don't have the resources for it. When we can, we certainly do deploy them. We've had a couple. So over the weekend, we just had Halloween club coverage, right? It's an anticipation of what we hope to be a really fun weekend for everybody. But I think, sometimes that fun comes at a price to the people that live and work here, after a long night. But there were posts scattered throughout Hell's Kitchen, 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, some spots on 8th Avenue. In that situation, we were assigned an extra complement of officers for those 3 to 4 days. And that's how we utilized them. We didn't touch upon it here in this meeting. I'm sure some of you have heard about it. There's 2 different crime reduction, or it's 3 different crime reduction initiatives really going on throughout Midtown these days. I say Midtown, I'm kind of talking loosely about Midtown South and this precinct, Midtown North. From about the mid-30s to 47th Street, unfortunately, we only have about 2 to 3 blocks of it between 8th and 9th Avenue, is a crime reduction initiative. So every night there's about 24 officers that are assigned there from 3 p.m. to lately it's been about 4:30 a.m. And that is to address quality of life and crime. So if you're in that area, you probably have seen officers along the post. And generally what we get is, I saw them, but I want them closer to my house, or I want to see them all the time. And those are very, very, very valid statements. We also have a deployment of officers in and around Times Square, and that amounts to about 100 officers throughout a 24-hour period. Within Midtown North, we also have officers assigned to our theater district, which is about 45th to 54th Street. So we definitely do have officers closer to like Madison and 5th. We have some officers on foot over there. What we do over in Hell's Kitchen, closer to the west of the command, we have our neighborhood coordination officers, and that's where we deploy our public safety teams. Those are the unmarked vehicles. I tend to concentrate them up there because that's where we take a significant amount of serious crime, and that's certainly where we have quality of life issues. It's not the business district, so it doesn't have a lot of outside unit officers that come in like Times Square or Midtown, like I just discussed, and that's where we prioritize resources a lot. That's largely our residential community, and that's where, you know, a lot of the people on this call are from, and that's what you want to hear and see. And if you don't see the officers right away, I want you to at least, God forbid there is something, know that they're there very quickly. You know, that there's a quick response time. And that's sort of where the car thing comes in, you know, that they can cover more ground in a vehicle, obviously. I know that's arguable in Manhattan on any given day, any time of the week, but that's kind of where we are now. The final initiative that I kind of glossed over because it doesn't really apply to the Hell's Kitchen area is, although they do some work here, is the business recovery initiative. And we held a meeting about it earlier. I'm sorry, I know I keep referencing it, but that was kind of like the beginning of our day. And they do a lot of stuff with illegal vendors, illegal peddlers. What they have been a huge help here with is homeless encampment. They do a lot of work with the Department of Homeless Services and breaking ground. And I always take a look, personally, I do this at the homeless encampments just to see, you know, what are people reporting, what are they seeing, and what specific details. And, you know, it's interesting. You can tell like the difference between like, oh, there's a homeless encampment, we don't like it, it's unsightly, to this homeless encampment is frightening to me. Or this guy on the corner who's living here is shooting up. So we prioritize that with them, and they're excellent at coming out. Unfortunately, what I see in some of the calls, and this is like, I can't imagine, you know, how hard it is for the person reporting it to say, thank you so much for coming out and taking care of this yesterday or 2 days ago, but now he or she is back, or now they are back. Or I know they moved, but now I see a new caller and it's 2 blocks away, and I know it's the same, you know, housing vulnerable person. And so, you know, we do our best with the social services agencies to see, you know, how can we help these people to find, you know, more adequate living situations.
All right, Marty.
Thank you, Inspector O'Malley, for the work that you do and for the information that you have shared with us tonight. I want to ask a comparative question on 2 issues that were raised tonight. The first one is the data, the crime data that you reported. How does that compare to the rest of the city? Are we better or are we worse? And the second comparison I'd like you to talk about is your staffing issue. How does your correct need for more personnel compare to the need of other precincts, both nearby and far away?
I'll answer those in reverse, if that's okay. In terms of staffing, I think it's fair to say that probably every precinct, and there's 77 patrol precincts, and then I think there's 8 or 9 additional housing service areas, and there's also about a dozen transit districts. I believe everybody has a staffing deficit. I'm not privy to the department's overall headcount, what we may or may not have lost for various reasons in the past, 2 years. But I'd say slightly more than anecdotally, I am aware of, every single uniformed command having this problem. Everyone definitely has less officers than they used to have. I shouldn't say everybody, because I'm sure there are some commands that have probably been flooded with officers for various reasons. That's not my place to comment on it. Just professionally, I'm not privy to that information. But I would say the majority of patrol commands are probably, understaffed right now. And again, the definition of understaffed varies. Is it understaffed to the, is ideal staffing what we're looking at? Are we looking at prior headcounts or current headcounts, or meeting the bare minimum manning standards that have been set by the department? So I think we're kind of sort of, to loosely answer it, in the same boat.
That's a very useful answer to me, and it puts our district needs in a broader context when we ask for more officers in our district, which is something that we do ask for. We are competing with the underfunding of the police force in the entire city.
That's really, I would really love to see the numbers personally. It's just not something that, funnels down to us. Like I said, this command, we cover a large, ground. And within it is, a tremendous population, massive tourist industry, massive industry, hospitality, dining, everything. And then residential commands, residential areas, as well as, the business districts, which obviously remain concerned because we're all looking at, bringing money back to the city. But for those of us who are city residents, I think we would all like to just really love living in the city again. So I wouldn't feel defeated in saying like, oh, there are other places that, need cops too. It's something that I have to deal with. Like, I can't just cry every day. I can't tell you this, and I can't tell, my supervisors, well, I don't have enough people, we do our best, and we do, doing more with less here is, it's been pretty much the way of life. And it's something you would never think in a command this large, and in a command that always dealt with such a vital part of the city's, life. So to move on to crime citywide, remember, we're an incredibly diverse city, right? So I talked about what drives our, crime statistics is grand larcenies. And I gave you the broad range of things grand larcenies include. And like I said, by and large, our grand larcenies are often paper crimes or unattended crimes, unattended property crimes. They're not a lot of, like I said, what we say, from person crimes. Remember, shoplifting, anything over $1,000 stolen also qualifies here. So when you see these videos of people walking into retail stores or pharmacies with duffel bags and just shelving, those are grand larcenies. If you walk into Saks and you steal, one nice bag, that's a grand larceny. But that's always been the way here, minus the extreme shoplifting. So that's something we're accustomed to. What I think we've all, become uncomfortable with is the quality of life stuff that isn't discussed in those stats because it doesn't translate into major crimes. What we definitely have here is a tremendous quality of life, struggle. We're struggling to improve it. And when we put in, we utilize the mechanisms that are available to us, we're not getting the desired results. And you certainly aren't getting the desired results. So an example I used today, I'm sorry if I'm repeating it for anyone on the call. You may see a group of guys drinking on the corner every day outside of, a bodega or a deli. And we'll go and we'll, seize the alcohol and we'll issue a summons for it. In about a month or so, the return date to go to court and answer out that summons will pass. If they don't go to court, there should be a warrant issued. The next time we encounter this person and we're writing a summons, we'll see that they have a warrant for the summons. And we will say, okay, you're going to come with us and we're going to bring you down to court and the judge is going to decide what to do with it. The judge is going to vacate the warrant and this person is going to go home. Now we're talking about, alcohol use here. So I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, good, it's not criminal and that's how it should be. But that is a quality of life issue for the people who live on that corner. Similarly, when we talk about misdemeanor crimes, we're now bound by certain things where we must give desk appearance tickets for certain crimes. So instead of somebody, even being incarcerated or in custody or just off the street and not offending for maybe 24 hours, 36 hours, they walk right out of the precinct. And it's something, we look forward to. This came up earlier today, when Midtown Community Court is once again, hosting arraignments. Because at least with a judge in front of some of these offenders on low-level crime, should they come back and answer to this desk appearance ticket, or if we're able to draw it up, as we say, live and bring them straight to the judge for arraignment, that's another authority figure that can say, okay, incarceration may not be the answer for you, but an inpatient treatment program may be, because you're in front of me every single day, or I've seen you 100 times, or, maybe we need to get you a vocational program, or you're young and you should be in a certain, youth program. That is definitely, I can't speak to why the court isn't open right now, but having worked in the past with a community court in a prior command, I was really thrilled to be working with them. It was an excellent solution to what others see as low-level crimes, but aren't low-level to us.
Inspector, all this information is really useful to me and probably to everybody on the call. My question is, you might not be able to, compare the data that you have for Midtown North, how it's situated in the rest of the city?
Right,
Worse,
and
better?
Marty, I'm going to have to cut you off here with that part of the question. Okay.
Very important part of the question.
Yeah, no, I understand that, he's asking Inspector to compare Midtown North to possibly other precincts, similar size or whatnot.
To make it real quick, I'm sorry, I know time is an issue here. In terms of shooting incidents, we're one of the lowest commands in the entire city. We've had one shooting incident throughout the year. We're at November 3rd. In terms of grand larcenies, we're one of the top precincts in the city consistently, like I said, for all of the reasons we discussed. In terms of burglaries, we're in, say, the top 25 out of 77 consistently. What we also are, though, in comparison to that, is consistent with those crimes, very high in the amount of arrests made for those crimes. So while we may lead in grand larcenies committed, we also lead generally, or at least in, let's say, top 3 to 5 in grand larceny arrests that take place.
That's a very good answer. Thank you.
All right, Jesse, you want to take us home here?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'll be very quick. Inspector, thank you very much for attending tonight, and my apologies for not knowing of your promotion. One thing I just wanted to just say thank you very much for you and your staff for always being available for all of our meetings, my district service cabinet every month, and then also most recently the Social and Racial Justice Task Force. I know that's not an easy night for you guys to dedicate staff to, so I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to say I was on that call earlier today, and I think that's one of the struggles, I think, and this first, so I remember maybe saying this for everybody else, is the difference between the precincts in terms of some of the numbers that we're, in terms of the amount of crime and the amount of things being reported. I think, if you hear Midtown South's numbers, they are almost like as if they are from another planet compared to some of the stuff that we're talking about today. And it is particularly scary. So I just, it's 10th precinct has its issues as well. We have 4 precincts in our district. But I just wanted to thank you for coming today and spending the amount of time that you have.
Thank you very much, Inspector. We appreciate your time. We hope to see you back again soon.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, trying to keep this meeting moving. We have a public hearing on our statement of district needs. For that, I'm going to turn it over to our second vice chair and the chair of the Budget Task Force, Jessica Chape.
Thank you, Lowell, and thank you, everyone. Later this evening, we will be discussing and reviewing the statement of budget needs and requests that come along with that. But for now, we will have a public session. I understand that 3 people have signed up. I think, as is typical, we limit the comments to 2 minutes. And Jesse, if you want to let me know who's up or move people over, we can begin that part.
I do. Just give me a moment. I'm having some technical difficulties on my end.
No problem.
Jesse, we okay here?
Yeah, I'm sorry, just shut down on me. So just give me one moment.
Mhm.
Okay, so the three people we have listed here that signed up were Elizabeth Benjamin, Daniel and Jill Brand, and Mohammed Kubday. I'm going to see if they're in our attendees section.
I do
Great,
not
thank
see
you.
Elizabeth. What was the second name?
Daniel,
Daniel and Jill Brand.
Nope,
See any brands?
nope.
I do not
and
see.
Mohammed.
Okay, well,
Someone did just raise their hand. I'm not sure if I know how to use attendees, but it looks like someone raised their hand.
Pamela raised her hand.
Pamela did.
Okay, our chair, are we able to bring someone over who's
sure.
not on the list? Okay,
Sure.
great.
I
So
will
let's
bring-
bring. And just to remind everyone, this is specifically on the statement of district needs. General public session will be held after.
Right, because I know Pamela signed up for the public session as well, and I know what she's speaking about there.
Right.
Pamela? did we
Pam?
move you over? Yeah,
Yeah, hi. Yes, when Jesse read the names of the people who were signed up for public session, I know there are other people signed up, and I mistook what part of the public session you were talking about. So I just
All right,
wanted
we'll come
Jesse
back.
to know I'm here.
Okay, we
back,
will come back to
Pamela.
you. Okay, in light of that, I think our public session on the statement of district needs is closed.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay, and we are now going to go to the regular public session. I want to make an announcement before I give this off to our first Vice Chair, Jeffrey LeFrancois. I know a number of people signed up to speak about the big deal event space on West 17th Street. As is reflected on the updated agenda, that application to the SLA has been withdrawn. As there is no pending application before the SLA, our letter has been withdrawn. Our letter will not go. So if anyone is signed up to speak about big deal, there's nothing to say because there's no letter. There's no longer an agenda issue. That has been resolved. I will say, to the satisfaction of the community board, the committee had voted to an outright denial of recommendation to the SLA. And in light of that, the applicant withdrew the application. So if anyone is signed up to speak about that, there is no need to at this point. The issue is closed. With that, Jeffrey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. As is our monthly custom, we'll be running a public session tonight. Any member that has signed up in advance of tonight's meeting will have 2 minutes to speak on a topic of their choosing. Just so the members that did sign up regarding the 17th Street location space, I do have you all at the end of my list. And so if anybody that did sign up to speak does want to, I'll run through those names quickly and just raise your hand. We can bring you over if so. But as Lowell said, the community board was successful in its efforts regarding the space. So with that, I will be using my timer. Anybody signed up in advance, again, will have 2 minutes to speak on a topic of their choosing. So Jesse will lead the pack. Ms. Pamela Wolf was actually at #1 on my list, so it's good she's here already. Followed by Diana DeCruz and then Lisa Wager. Pamela?
He's coming over now.
Okay.
Unmute, start. There, wow, what a process. Good evening, everybody. Jeffrey, before you start running the clock on me, I have a question which has to do with my eligibility to speak on this subject, since it is a subject that is currently on the agenda for tonight's meeting, which is the Gansevoort buildings.
Pamela, you are a public member of the Chelsea Land Use Committee.
Yes,
Now that we've let the world know that, say what you want. You know, are you speaking on behalf of, you're speaking on behalf of Save Chelsea, I believe, tonight?
Yes, I believe I am. I think
Okay.
that's
So
my plan.
although Pamela has a connection to the board, she's speaking on behalf of another organization this evening.
Thank you. Now we've got that cleared. Jeffrey, you can start the clock.
You may begin.
I'm here tonight to talk about these 9 buildings that are, I think everybody on this board is aware of the absolute tragedy that has taken place and will continue to take place if something doesn't happen fast at this site. These are the 9 buildings on the northeast corner of 14th Street and 9th Avenue. 6 of them are on 9th Avenue and 3 are on 14th Street. They are all protected as part of the Gansevoort Market Historic District. Unfortunately, they are not protected by the Landmarks Preservation Commission any longer, who seem to have stepped aside to allow the Department of Buildings to basically condemn all 9 of these. We are talking about 9 buildings in a historic district which are about to disappear entirely. This is a tragedy, and that's what I want to address tonight. I have a few written comments I want to talk about. My question: how is it that a government agency whose sole purpose is preservation of historic sites can stray so far from its stated mission? Because of the greed of the real estate industry and with the passivity of the Landmarks Preservation Commission and the blind focus of the Department of Buildings, we will lose an irreplaceable 9 historic buildings that are the gateway to the Gansevoort Historic District and the meeting place between Greenwich Village Historic District and the Chelsea neighborhood. This is our ultimate wake-up call, folks. The fabric of these historic buildings will be gone. The timbers, the joists, the studs, the plaster that tell us of the lives lived for generations within these walls. I grieve the loss of the old wood timbers. Really?
2 minutes a person.
Okay. Well, I'm going to quickly then read, never mind. I'm going to read the last paragraph of the letter that Save Chelsea has written to the mayor, the Department of Buildings, and to Melanie LaRocca. We ask that LPC and DOB to share publicly their directives to the developer of the Gansevoort Market project. We also request a photo illustrated structural analysis of the row houses supporting the Department of Buildings decision and evaluating all repair in place alternatives that were determined infeasible. This would make good on your stated commitments to transparency. If the structural defects that are in fact insurmountable without disassembly, this information will reassure the community and establish an accountable standard for such decisions going forward. The requested material should be readily available if due diligence has been done. If not, it is not provided, the public will be left to doubt and wonder whether landmarked row houses might be ordered to be taken apart based on their current condition. Any vagueness about this Gansevoort market precedent is potentially destructive and encourages future demolition of, nothing is safe. No landmarked.
Thank you, Pamela.
Townhouse is safe. Thank you.
We're going to move on. Thank you. We're going to move on to our next speaker this evening, Diana, followed by Lisa Wager, and then Erin McFadden. Diana?
Hi, yeah, I'm Diana Ducro, and I am also here speaking on behalf of Save Chelsea. I'm speaking tonight on item 15. That's the letter from the Chelsea Land Use Committee to the Department of Buildings and Landmark Preservation Commission asking for a stop to the demolition of the 9 historic houses that Pamela just talked about. It's the belief of Save Chelsea that this demolition was approved without sufficient evidence that it is in fact necessary in order to address safety concerns. And we also believe that the buildings very likely can be repaired and made safe through less drastic means. Demolition of these buildings would set a dangerous precedent for all of the city's historic landmarks. But a stop work will allow all stakeholders the opportunity to meet to reach a better solution that will make the buildings safe while also protecting their historic integrity. As the letter states, The significance of these 9 buildings calls for extraordinary measures to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Wager. I'm the Director of Government Community Relations at the Fashion Institute of Technology, the SUNY College on 27th Street between 7th and 8th, with the Res Hall on 31st Street between 9th and Dyer, which is in the district. How are you? I'm here to tell you a few things that are happening at FIT. First of all, next Thursday, the 11th, journalist, author, and critic Alexander Fury is going to talk about his latest book, Vivienne Westwood, The Complete Collections, with the museum at FIT curator Colleen Hill. Fury is the fashion features director at the Financial Times and was the first men's critic at the New York Times Style section. The conversation is going to cover highlights from his own very renowned personal collection of fashion, which includes designs by Westwood, Galliano, Prada, and Christian Lacroix, among others. As you know by now, all of the museum's fall fashion culture programs are offered online. They're free. Of course, they're open to the public, and anyone can register for this one on the MFIT webpage at FITNYC/museum. And by the way, we just relaunched our website today, and it is really cool and elegant and just fun to wander through. I also wanted to say that FIT is very pleased to announce the Bob Fish Graduate Student Award Program at our School of Graduate Studies. The program, which is funded by a $300,000 gift from Mr. Fish, who's the founder and former chair and CEO of Route 21, offers an award for entrepreneurial excellence, grants for theses projects, and graduate scholarships for students in our fashion design MFA and global fashion management MPS programs. Since the overwhelming majority of our graduate students work full or part-time, these support opportunities are very significant. And in closing, I just want to mention that terrific Halloween display that you may have seen outside 314 West 22nd Street was created by FIT visual presentation and exhibition design professor and Chelsea resident Barbara Salzman, and it was included in the recent New York Post roundup of best Halloween decorations in the entire New York City area. So we're just giving back to the community in so many ways. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Erin McFadden, Leah James, and Eric Washington. Erin?
I don't believe Erin is here.
Okay, let's go to Leah if she's here.
I think
Or Eric.
I thought Leah over, but Eric, if you're with us still. Eric, you have to
I'm
unmute
here.
yourself.
I'm here. I'm sorry.
All right.
Searching for the mic. I wanted to speak regarding item 14, the letter from Chelsea Land Use Committee to the Landmarks Preservation Commission regarding the designation of 128 West 17th Street, formerly known as Colored School Number 4. This is essentially just to say thank you to the committee for allowing me to present to them on October 18th and for the draft of the letter that's before the full board today. This is issues drawing a lot of support. As in the course of this meeting, I just saw come across my phone, I've been CC'd on a letter of support, unanimous support from the Greenwich Village Society of Historic Preservation. And I hope that the full board will also support this effort.
Thank you, Eric. Leah James, if you're with us. Otherwise, Timothy Harrell, Cynthia Green, and then Maria Diaz.
Leah should be coming over now.
Okay. And then Timothy, Cynthia, and Maria.
Hello.
Hi, Leah, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Leah James. I'm the Director of Organizing for Housing Conservation Coordinators. I just want to set out a reminder that on December 4th and 5th, we will have our 16th tenant conference, Westside Tenant Conference. And I would love to extend an invitation to you all. And I wanted to request or ask as an opportunity for, I could email a flyer to support, to spread the word to the community and which ways I can do that. That would be very helpful. Later on this month, I would love to also attend the housing committee to talk about another housing campaign that's about to be launched, affordable housing around 421A affordable tenants in the community, and get your input on how we could move forward with this campaign that will be, eventually statewide, but it would start and launch in the Westside. And I think that's all I have.
That's great, Leah. Thank you. You can certainly, I believe the board every year always promotes the Westside Tenant Conference. So if you provide us with the details and the flyer, I'm sure Jesse and Janine can get that out to our email list.
Okay, so I just go on the website and go to your email and just email everything and logistics.
Yep.
Leo, we'll reach out to you tomorrow and we can set that up.
Okay, perfect. And we just announced today that we will have Linda Rosenthal as our keynote and other elected officials and workshops. I just touched on a little base of the workshops we'll be having around NYCHA, public housing. Sorry, I'm in the Bronx. Public housing workshop, what happens when you call 311 workshop, and our older adult program as well. With Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, and that's just a little insight about the workshops that we haven't. So I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Timothy Harrell, Cynthia Green, and Maria Diaz.
Maria, I think, is on. I don't believe I have the other two.
Then let's start with Maria.
Well, Timothy Harrell is on.
Oh. There we go. Got him.
Is Maria over?
I'm here. No, I'm
Hi,
here.
Maria.
Hi, how are you? Hi.
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Okay, so I thought we were gonna go to the next person, but I'm here to talk about two chamber initiatives. One will piggyback off of what.
Maria, I got to cut you off for a second. You got to tell us who you're speaking on behalf of.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry. I am the executive director of the Greenwich Village Chelsea Chamber of Commerce. And we're here to talk. I'm here to talk about two chamber initiatives that are taking place in Chelsea. The first piggybacks off of the conversation you had earlier, and it's our Safe City, Safe Streets annual luncheon that is going to take place December 16th. To go along with that, we have two precinct tours that are open specifically to business owners, but anyone is welcome to attend. The 10th precinct tour will be on November 18th. And the Midtown South Precinct Tour will be on December 2nd. All that information can be found on our website, villagechelsea.com. And the second initiative that I want to talk about is It's Time for Chelsea marketing program that we're hosting for businesses in Chelsea. We have around 40 businesses that are participating in the program, collected a set of deals and incentives. We're giving away thousands of dollars worth of prizes. Follow the account on Instagram. It's Time for Chelsea, and it has its own website as well. It's timeforchelsea.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria. Timothy Harrell. Timothy with us?
He is.
Okay, great.
Timothy, you have to unmute. Timothy? He's on and he's muted. Timothy, we're going to go once, twice, three times.
3 times.
All right.
World Series is over, but the strikes remain. So let's see. I lost my list. Sorry. And no Cynthia Green, correct, Jesse?
No Cynthia Green.
Okay. So I see David Glasser. You have your hand up. I am going to give you the 2 minutes, even though you didn't sign up in advance. and that will be the last person of the general public session. So Jesse, if you want to bring over Mr. Glasser, and then we will, if anybody did sign up to speak, I'm going to run through the names about the 17th Street event space, which again, the board is not taking up this evening. The applicant has removed their request from the estate SLA. So with that, if Mr. Glasser has been moved over, we'll go to that for our final speaker on general topics this evening.
David?
David? Everybody's, what are we, 18, 19 months into this?
Okay.
Okay. So with that, I'm just gonna announce the names of the folks that we're gonna speak on item 7, on the item 1 that's been removed tonight. Eric Steele, Stephen Noring, Kate Linkler, Hannah DeBoer, and Bill Borrock all had signed up to speak on the item. Since we are not taking that up, we don't plan to have further discussion on the topic this evening. I do see some new hands have gone up. We keep a very advanced sign-up policy on this. Mr. Chair, in the interest of moving the meeting forward, I'm going to call the public session closed and pass the meeting back to you.
Thank you, Mr. LeFrancois. Appreciate it. Okay, so now
Eric Glasser's sign is up there.
I'm sorry.
He's been over here since we brought him over and has not been able to speak.
Yeah, so public session is closed. We're moving on now. Jesse, if you could remove the people who you've moved over who are still here.
Doing so now.
All right, next item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. So are there any questions on the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed to the agenda? Thank you. Next is the minutes from last month. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, next up, I believe Gail Brewer is with us for the next to last time as Borough President. And so I will give the floor over to the Manhattan Borough President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A few things. First of all, I do want to pick up on the work that you did with Inspector O'Malley and the fact that Brian Lewis, I thought, did a really good job with your board members and others today on the Business District Recovery Initiative and what is or is not going on. So you heard a discussion of, at least from the great work of Inspector O'Malley, and it was similar in terms of the other precincts. I didn't know, and it seemed like others didn't know, that the Midtown Court was not open. Lauren brought that to our attention. So I'm going to work with you and others to get the court open. I'm sure there's a staff shortage like there is everywhere. That court needs to be open. You can't do part of what the issue is and not have a outlet. So that's one. And then the second is to try to figure out between Midtown Court, Fountain House, what's Be Heard doing that Susan Herman is leading, Uptown, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it was Joe Restichi's good idea to try to have some of the groups small in number to come together to see, okay, so an example was given today by Inspector O'Malley of the person who steals eyeglasses, goes to court, gets out, steals a city bike and goes steals more glasses. That was within an hour. And, it goes on like that. So how do we stop that recidivism and that cycle? So anyway, I'm just saying, I'll give it my best shot. We've had some luck in Washington Square Park, not in your area, with 6 drug treatment programs and Greenwich House, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. With substance abuse specifically. They're not stealing the plants, they're not stealing anything. But the drug situation working together has had somewhat of an impact according to the Parks Department, and that's the best indicator. And then, of course, how do we measure all of this, which is always something that you care about and I care about. So I mean, the whole city has got the same problem. So if we can accomplish a diversion here or stopping the recidivism here, that would be huge. So I'd love to work on it with you. Number 2, Penn Station. So it appears, and there were several members of your board, I'm sure, participating. Board 5 certainly was, when the Governor Hochul made her announcement that it's, I think the way I would characterize it is Penn Station restoration, renovation first, and Gateway, I don't know, 2025, nobody knows exactly. Of course, I asked about affordable housing, and we asked about, what is the payment? I'm concerned, I think you are, about what goes on above ground, not to mention the good things that could go on below ground. It'll be a 1 story, not a 2-story. There are lots of pieces to it that I'm sure you'll have already been briefed on. It was very exciting for me to see Kathleen Garcia doing the briefing, because you felt that it was an honest broker and that you were getting the facts. So we still have to worry about the historic, and we still have to worry about the co-op on the block, and there's lots of issues, but I think there's a dialogue and there's some meetings coming up. I also just want to mention, just like everybody else, about what 44-54 9th Avenue, and also their addresses on 14th Street. We joined Village Preservation and Save Chelsea and some of the persons you heard earlier to try to say, come on, we have to work. The DOB and the LPC have got to stop any work right now on this marketplace in Gansevoort and see how we can have a discussion. So I support what Village Preservation and others are doing. I also just want to mention the helicopters. Oh my God. So long story short, you are so correct. It was very interesting when we had, and you had a wonderful representative of Ward 4 there. But the fact of the matter is, we now have 35 elected officials from New Jersey and New York. We've never done that before, saying, stop the helicopters. They are still continuing. Photographs, go to New Jersey, get on a helicopter, come to New York City, over Manhattan, over Brooklyn, take your picture, and go back to New Jersey. It was really interesting because we were all going, everybody was complaining about it, from Congressman Nadler, elected officials, and then all of a sudden a helicopter shows up in your heliport, as I call it, but there on in Hudson River Park. And you could, I mean, it was like you had to inhale the fuel. It was that bad. You literally had to inhale because you had no choice, not to mention the noise. So the environmental issues, the noise issues, closing down that port, it's both up to the board, it's also up to the state, it's up to the city. There's a lot of interrelated aspects to the heliport at that location. And there's also the issue of getting rid of the helicopter. So there's the tourism, the non-essential, and then the Brooklyn folks in particular are very upset about the ones that are flying out to the Hamptons because they go right over Brooklyn. So just so you know, and I want to thank Assembly Member Dick Gottfried and certainly 2 senators, Kavanaugh, and the folks, so many people have come to be part of this event, and I really appreciate it. So I want to thank also Senator Hoylman, and there were many others who participated, as well as the folks from New Jersey. Phil Cohen, who is a very active Hoboken City Council member, rounded up all of his colleagues in New Jersey. And the material, the legislation that Nadler has with others is attached to the infrastructure bill. I have no idea what's happening with that, except please, whatever gets passed, have a portion that says, if you are a helicopter, you cannot fly over any city of 8 million or more. Well, that's us. So let's see if that is included. I also wanted to say that the Community Board Leadership Training Series continues. We will put the information in the chat, and it goes until the end of the month, November 20th specifically. I know we had a conversation previously about the redistricting commissioner for the congressional, but now there's one on November 10th. And that will be for the, again, continuing on their draft plans that I guess the independent redistricting commission could not agree to. I do want to mention, and you probably know this, but in Washington Heights, Manhattan is going to be challenging to draw. Those 2 communities, which is 1 community board, lost more population than any other community in the 5 boroughs. And I think people went to the Bronx, they might have gone to Jersey, and it's unfortunate because it's going to push those districts in different directions, just so you know. Open meetings law, I know we're trying to figure it out before January 15th. You know that the Borough President's Office is going to provide an OWL for everybody, which is this device that allows you to be hybrid and heard, just so you know that that is something that we're contributing, but we all have to figure out what's going to happen by January 15th. Every Tuesday at 3 o'clock, not yesterday, but every other Tuesday, we have a discussion, as you know, about vaccines or where is the money in terms of the city, state, or federal, and you're welcome to join us. It's a very helpful discussion, I think, on a general basis. Regarding congestion pricing, I haven't heard more, except that the governor has to appoint a task force that has a fancy name, but somebody has to make a decision, some group, about what is the price, what is the exemption, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be in my opinion, god-awful meetings, because nobody's going to be happy. And the people who own cars, I think I hear about 10 or 15 at least every day. I support congestion pricing, but and we are very hopeful that one of the people on that board will be a community member who knows transportation. I have no idea who that might be, but I do think that it could be somebody from Board 4, who knows? We would like to say that it is mandated for the governor to put on somebody like that to address the many, many Manhattan concerns that are going to come up. I also want to just mention that Attorney General, as I think before, has allocated much money because she was able to get from the Sackler family billions of dollars for the state and 256 for the city of New York. My understanding, and I'm sure the assembly member and the senator know more than I, it'll be decided sometime in January, and there probably will be a board to make those decisions. I just want to make sure whether it's Midtown, 125th Street, and there's some parks in Lower Manhattan that have particularly challenging situations. I don't need to tell you about yours because you know what it is. Manhattan North has many, and it could use funding to be able to address some of these issues. So I'm hoping that that money gets spent appropriately. I want to mention that I know Brian Lewis has been working on the Penn South Commercial Site 5 project. I know that we've joined other elected officials to call on the board of that particular development to better understand the project. That's one of those ones where there's a board, which we love, our shareholders whom we love, and there seems to be lots of discussion that goes on. We will have a December 12th at John Jay College, which is not too far from you. We're going to have a Manhattan Futures reception and some folks talking in different rooms, video about the future of Manhattan. So we'll let you know as soon as we have more details. Thank you, Matt. Board 4.
Thank you, Gail. Got 2 questions if you've got time.
Yep.
David Holoka.
Hi, Gail. I've been in touch with Lizette Chaparro in your office, and I understand from her that your office has been trying to set up a meeting with Department of Buildings Commissioner LaRocca about the Gansevoort Market row houses.
Yep.
Has there been any progress on that?
I know we are trying. I haven't checked with Lizette today, but we will keep you updated. We're trying very hard to do that. And the commissioner did promise that she would meet with you and us and others.
Thank you.
Reno?
Hello, Gail. I'm a new member of CB4, and your office has been very kind to organize a whole host of trainings for us. I just wanted to ask if it was possible for a majority of the meetings have been scheduled from noon to 1, if it was possible to schedule them later in the evening so that those who can't get away from work can attend them.
All right, I will certainly ask. I think we had some in the evenings in the past and it was a lower turnout because people have other meetings, but I will certainly ask. All of the meetings are archived, just so you know, but it's good to be able to have a back and forth, which is what you can only do if it's a time which fits your schedules. Yes, I will ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gail. Appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.
Next up, Assembly Member Richard Godfrey is with us. Dick, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just want to mention a couple of things. One, Penn Station. I was at a press conference this afternoon where Governor Hochul announced her plan to prioritize the remaking of the existing Penn Station, which I think is a terrific choice on her part. So we're not going to have to wait till 2035 for that development to go forward. She was also very emphatic about looking to include stakeholder input into the plans for that, as has been done with the Empire Station project so far, and I was glad to hear her stressing that. She did a sort of short preview of the responses that we're expecting to get from Empire State Development about the recommendations that the Community Advisory Committee work group submitted now, I guess it's a couple of months ago, in terms of, she talked about reducing the density of the new development, something we very much want to have happen, substantial reduction, and a commitment to a specific commitment to affordable housing, and some other things. So that was all, I think, very encouraging. She mentioned one thing that is maybe not earth-shaking, but interesting. She says it bothers her that this major transportation hub for North America is named after an adjoining state. And so she said she wants us to look for a new name, whether it's named for somebody or something or what have you. An interesting concept. It struck me that it was interesting that she never mentioned calling it Empire Station, which seemed to be the choice of the previous governor. So maybe it's just a small piece of evidence of this being a new game in town. I was also thinking, just like, you're a real New Yorker if you call part of the subway the IRT. If they give Penn Station a new name, you'll be a real New Yorker if you still call it Penn Station. Last thing I want to mention is the heliport. Gail talked a lot about the helicopter issues in Manhattan, and we're all on board, pardon the pun, on that proposition. But Brad Hoylman and I are introducing state legislation to amend the Hudson River Park Act to get the heliport out of Hudson River Park once and for all. I just, we've been talking about trying to get this done for 20 years, just as we talked for over 20 years about getting the tow pound off Pier 76. That finally took, among other things, an act of the legislature. So we're gonna try to get legislation done to get the heliport out of Hudson River Park. Those are the couple of things I want to mention. I'd be happy to take questions.
Anyone have questions for Assemblymember Godfrey? Go ahead, Dale.
Thanks, Assemblymember Gottfried. As I understand it, the plan that Governor Hochul is calling for does not include the eminent domain demolition of the buildings to the south of the current Penn Station. Is that your understanding as well?
That was not talked about today. The strip to the south is part of the Gateway project, not the redoing of Penn Station itself. And today's press conference was all about the redoing of Penn Station itself, not the Gateway piece.
I see. So some outlets are reporting that her plan is not accounting for the eminent domain removal of those structures.
Okay, I don't think that was part of today's discussion. So that may have been spoken about in some other context, but not today.
Gotcha.
If I could jump in there, Dick, we had I was part of a preview of the press conference before it happened this morning.
Yeah.
And eminent domain was never mentioned, but the graphics still refer to a Penn Station South, which would be the buildings on 31st Street. So it's still in the graphics they're using, Dale. but
Okay.
Where the working group isn't done with Empire State Development yet. So
Yeah, this was a quick reporting, so it could be inaccurate. Yeah. Also, the density reduction was characterized as something like 7% less dense than the prior proposal. I don't know if that tracks with what you.
Well, the number she gave was getting rid of 1.4 million square feet. And she said that was the equivalent of one full building.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what percentage that is, but that was the number that she used.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for the clarifications.
And Dale, I promise you someone else who will address us will have additional answers on this.
Great, thanks, Lowell.
Mr. Pascarella, Brad, you have a question for Dick?
Quick question, Dick. My understanding, and I understand our board about the helipad, I just want to look down into the future or up into the future that the legislation that's being discussed doesn't remove the ability of clean energy drones and think like a bus, so a transportation type of philosophy. So I understand we're trying to get rid of the helipad, but it's still a great opportunity to be a transportation hub for future transportation like drones. I just want to get that out there. I don't want to miss the boat on this, thinking down the line. Thank you.
Well, all I would say is, if something like that is going to be built, don't build it in Hudson River Park. Hudson River Park is a very tiny percentage of the island of Manhattan. There's lots of other space on the island of Manhattan. You don't have to put that in a park. If someone suggested putting it in Central Park, there would be riots in the streets. Hudson River Park is entitled to respect as a park.
Anyone else have questions for Dick? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you joining us.
A pleasure.
I am going to go next to our representative from Congressman Jerry Nadler's office, Mr. Robert Atterbury, because Robert texted me and said he has more information on the Penn Station thing, which is what I promised Brad.
I can just help give, I think, a little bit of color on some of that. But so let me give my update first. The House has been incredibly busy recently, and so I'm just going to give some of the top line overview of some of the things that the Congressman has going on. Today, we passed the Congressman's bill, the Non-Debtor Release Prohibition Act. This is a bill that builds on the previous Sackler Act, which prohibits companies from using bankruptcy as a way to get around from being responsible for legal judgments. And that's what we see with the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma and the opioid crisis, as well as some other companies that are trying to use bankruptcy as a way to avoid responsibility in hiding their assets through bankruptcy. That passed our committee today, one of the Congressman's bills. We also passed the Forced Arbitration and Justice Act. This act would prohibit consumers and employees and folks seeking compensation and justice for civil rights abuses from being being required to go through forced arbitration. That's arbitration where you have an independently hired arbiter who makes a decision in your case that is binding. It is a way in which everything from makers of devices to McDonald's and their employees bind people from being able to access our courts. So we passed that through the Judiciary Committee today. We also held this week a hearing on judicial ethics and introduced a bipartisan and very importantly, and increasingly importantly, bicameral piece of legislation, the Courthouse Ethics Transparency Act. Folks may have seen recently, a couple weeks ago, there was an article in Wall Street Journal that really detailed huge lapses in ethics in our federal court system, specifically that the judges were not recusing themselves when they should, when they had financial interests in a case for them. So this would clean up a lot of that, require much more reporting, much more transparency, and really have some more teeth in making sure that our federal judges are following our ethics laws. On a very brief update on the immigration provisions that are being included in the Build Back Better Act, which we are hopeful will pass soon. the congressman has been deeply involved in trying to negotiate to try to make sure that we were able to maintain some of the immigration provisions in the bill. Obviously, we've had difficulty with both the Senate and the Senate parliamentarian, who seems to run more things than some senators. The provisions in it right now would protect about 7 million people from removal and provide them work authorizations. These are people who are here undocumented, who have lapsed authorizations to be here, and it would both protect them from removal and authorize them to work. About 7 million people, 1.6 million dreamers, 3.6 million essential workers, including 1 million farm workers. It's really actually quite a lot of people. And it's one of the largest pieces of legalization that's happened in Congress almost ever. We also have introduced the Empower Act, which bans forced non-disclosures acts, requires publicly traded companies to report, and this is all around sexual harassment. And so public companies now have to report their settlements. We ban forced NDAs, and we would remove tax penalties on legal settlements for harassment. We reintroduced the State Justice Improvement Act, which would incentivize states to find alternatives to bail and provide legal incentives, support for them to do so, to end burdensome and high court fees, and many more. On Penn Station, the one piece that I will say that one of the things that our office has been pushing the state very hard to try to achieve is some more stakeholder involvement in particularly the transportation aspects of it, not just the project plan, which is development pieces around it. And that is the governor announced today, the stakeholder advisory group for the MTA that will be much more involved in the actual planning of the station and transportation aspects that we as a sort of collective group have previously been unable to comment on or be involved in. Going back to the earlier question regarding the Penn expansion and the eminent domain pieces, what I want to just remind folks is that when we talk about the Penn projects, and the governor really melded them together today because it's very easy to do, there are actually 4 distinct projects happening here all at the same time. There is Gateway, that's the tunnels under the Hudson. There is Penn expansion. Those are the new proposed basically tracks and platforms under that block 780, that's a block immediately south to it, the 2 shoulder pieces next to it. There is the general project plan, that's all of the zoning and pieces that go around it. There's the buildings, the east, south, north, all around it. Those are building provisions. And then there's the renovation of Penn. The governor today really touched on sort of 2 pieces, which was the renovation of Penn and that larger general project plan, which is a development piece. The general project plan provides a framework for what would happen on that block 780, so block to the south, as well as, but it requires there to have been a condemnation before in order to activate it. So it is dependent on the expansion piece, which is a separate project, which is going through a federal NEPA review right now and has not yet been selected as part of the preferred alternative to say that it's the best place and way to move trains. So that has to happen before those provisions in the GPP would be unlocked. So yes, the GPP has it. They are planning for it to come to fruition. It is not being decided there. It's being decided as part of the NEPA. Confusing. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Robert.
A lot of information very quickly.
Sabrina
I try to hit my 2 minutes.
Sabrina has a question for you.
Thank you. That was fast. Going back to your point about the parliamentarian senator rules in regards to immigration, as someone who follows immigration very closely, I thought there was a done deal that they could not take any reform in immigration in the reconciliation bill. Can you expand on that? Because this is really news to me.
Yes. So the Senate had ruled that provisions that were included in the House's version of the Build Back Better Act, which at this point is a name and not in an actual legislation anymore, but the original version that the House passed had much broader immigration provisions. Senate parliamentarian ruled that it constituted a new immigration program and therefore was not eligible under reconciliation, which is only allowed to be budget-related matters. the new provisions and the new proposal, and the Congressman has worked very, very hard to try to make this possible and find our way there to make sure that we were still including some pieces of it, or the maximum that we were allowed, instead is targeted at essentially changing the date of a previously existing program to much more recently, which and therefore authorizes, again, those 7 million people would be both be prevented or would have legal authorization in the country, so they would be prevented from being deported, as well as work authorizations. And those work authorizations are a key piece as to why we believe it should be able to make it through the Senate, in the way in which once those folks are legally able to work here, it has an impact on taxes, on revenue, on their ability to pay income taxes, and larger business pieces. So it has a huge financial impact on the bill, which is the part that will hopefully allow it to pass the Senate's review.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Robert? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being with us.
I'll have questions once everything's settled in.
Yeah, well, I think we'll all have a lot of questions, Mike.
Right.
All right.
We'll try to do a good roundup for everyone on BBB when it comes together.
Thank you, Robert.
We'll share.
As soon as you know what's in it. I'm going to go next to Leslie Espiat from Senator Robert Jackson's office, because it's now 7 hours ahead. It's 3 in the morning where RJ is.
Oh, hi, good evening, everyone. I just found out that he is on a plane back home. So I will give some information, but first we have some good news. The senator had introduced the constitutional proposal. One of them, which was the number 2, was approved. That was for the environmental rights amendment. And that was passed with a 69% of votes. And first it must be certified, but that's good news. And it's just a very simple amendment, which said each person shall have a right to clean air, water, and a healthful environment. So that's in the New York State Constitution Bill of Rights. And that happened yesterday. Our office has been very busy, especially with the ERAP, which is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. We are urging anyone, especially in our district 31, if you need assistance with rent or utilities, please contact our office. I have done a lot of applications, as well as applications for small business recovery funds. And that is also a possibility that it will be running out soon. So we must get all the applications in as soon as possible. We have also completed, next to our last food pantry, the last one will be November 17th. And we have been in partnership with the Westside campaign against hunger. So we thank them. And we were able to, at each food pantry, we were able to provide 175 to 200 families with packages. So that is coming to an end on November 17th. Also, we have provided a school year COVID concern form, and this is just to flag issues or concerns that are in the schools right now in terms of COVID. Any concerns parents, teachers, administrators may have, and they just want to contact our office and fill out a form so that they can get assistance from the community as well in our office. The other issues in District 31 have been, the number one is really the quality of life. We found a lot of the homeless situation, needles in the street, and up in northern Manhattan throughout the parks. So we are working with the precincts and the community to see how we can come to some solution and assistance for the community as well. I think that's about it for now. If you have any questions, you want to reach out, just contact our office. Also, if you want to sign up for the weekly newsletter updates, they cover a lot of information. And if you want to also provide events, we're happy to put them into our newsletter. Just give us 2 days prior to our weekly newsletters, which go out early Saturday morning. I think that's about it. Any questions?
Thank you, Leslie. Does anyone have any questions for Leslie? Or for Senator Jackson that she can answer? All right. Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you.
Next up, our beloved district manager, Jesse Bodine, with the district manager's report.
Hi, everybody. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Manhattan Community Board 4's office has been working on some following quality of life stuff. Overnight street work and building construction work in the Hudson Yards area. Corey Johnson's office has been very helpful in coordinating meetings with Department of Transportation, Department of Buildings. We were also, based off of last month's full board, this was raised at the full board during public session, we have scheduled a site visit with the block residents and a number of agencies regarding rats on the West 40s area that they highlighted. And so I want to, that hasn't happened yet, but I do want to thank the agencies for coordinating. Right now, all the agencies are stretched very thin in terms of staffing, and to make themselves available, it's very helpful. The only committee that is meeting at a different time than it normally does is Waterfront Parks and Environment, which is meeting tomorrow, November 4th at 6:30, due to the holiday next week. And then all other committees are meeting at their regular scheduled times. We will be scheduling a training session for new members, but also existing members, as we always do. We usually do that after the borough president's trainings happen. We do a sort of a follow-up of a land use training specifically for the Community District 4 area. That training is also on our website as well under member resources, so you can take a look at that early on if you like. And that's it.
Thank you, Jesse. Paul Devlin chaired our nominating committee this year, and we have a report from the nominating committee.
Hello, everyone. The way I understand this is going to work is that I'll report from the nominating committee. I'll ask for an acceptance of the report, which will essentially put those candidates we recommend into nomination. And then we'll open up the floor for nominations for other candidates, and then close nominations for everybody, and we'll vote on the nominees at the December meeting. So the report from the nominating committee is that there were 7 of us on the committee. I chaired with 3 other chairs of the board, Christine, Bert, and Dolores, plus 3 other members, Sabrina, Kit, and Hector. We put out a request for anybody who was interested in running, and there were 5 people who came forward for 5 positions. The committee met and interviewed all 5 candidates and then voted unanimously to recommend the nomination of the following candidates for the following positions. So for chair, it's Jeffrey LeFrancois. First vice chair is Jessica Chait. Second vice chair is Leslie Bogasian Murphy. Co-secretary Blake Caruso, and co-secretary Katie Stokes. So that is the official report. At the privilege of the chair, I'd like to see if I can get a motion to accept the committee's report.
Is there a second?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All
in favor of accepting the report?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed to accepting the report? Any abstentions or present not eligible? Terrific. Report is apparently unanimously accepted. So that in effect puts those 5 names into nomination. What I'd like to do now is open up the floor for nominations. If anybody would like to nominate another person for a different position, so you can't nominate yourself and you can't second for yourself, but we'll need a nomination for an individual and a second, put them into nomination. So opening up the floor for nominations. Is anybody interested in making one? 2, 3, done. We'll close nominations. So that will be the end of nominations. The 5 candidates as listed will be running for office and we'll vote on them. As a conclusion of the committee report, one of the things that this happened last year when I was chair last year, this happened. There were a lot of issues that came up in the discussions with the candidates, and we tried to tackle some of those issues in the upcoming year. And this year, there were 2 particularly notable conversations we had that I'd like to raise just to point out to the board, and then we'll follow up with the executive committee. I'll bring these issues to executive committee to see how we can move forward on them. The first is that we think there should be some conversations around methods and systems to increase the board's public presence across the community and notably through social media channels. So we'll try to tackle that. And the second is, we had a conversation, and we think this conversation needs to be broadened, about the progression to leadership roles on the board as we face the prospect of term limits. Our current practices take too long for members to reach the position of chair of the board before everyone is termed out in 8 years. So I'm going to follow up with the executive committee and see if we can't find a way to have a robust conversation about those 2 issues. So thank you very much for the privilege of being the chair, and I look forward to the elections next month.
Thank you, Paul. And congratulations to the nominees. You're in for it. All right, chair report. I didn't realize how busy we've been, but as a board, we have been incredibly busy behind the scenes. As all of you know, most of the work gets done either in committee or before committee meetings. All we're doing here is really approving stuff and moving on stuff that comes to the full board, but so much work gets done behind the scenes. You've already heard about the Empire Station Complex Working Group from a couple of our elected officials. The working group is getting formal briefings on Governor Hochul's updated plan. There's a session tomorrow, there's a session next Tuesday. And as part of that, we intend to let the powers that be know that we expect our voice to be heard the rest of the way. Now that there's a plan out there, we expect to be heard. The Port Authority Bus Terminal Working Group is participating in the EIS process with the folks at the Port Authority. I believe, are we going bi-weekly now, Bert? Yeah, the group will be meeting with Port Authority on a bi-weekly basis going forward, and pushing for the replacement of the Port Authority bus terminal. The Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee continues to work with HPD on the 2 public sites in Hell's Kitchen. That's the MTA and the DEP sites. I know Joe has been very busy on those behind the scenes. And we're trying to make progress on what we expect there. I asked Jesse to forward an email to everyone today, the article in the Chelsea community newspaper about the MTA site and the committee meeting that was held on that. So you all have an update on that. Chelsea Land Use continues to meet on the landmark buildings at the edge of Gansevoort Market that you've heard about tonight a number of times. We have a letter on that, and I'm not going to say any more on that until we get to that letter. Housing, Health, and Human Services continues to work with DHS on the placement of facilities within the district. Aside from all of the supportive housing that HPD wants to put in the district, DHS wants to put in a drop-in center in basically the same location. Waterfront Parks and Environment got a tour of the renovated Pier 57, and that will be on the agenda at WPE tomorrow. We also met today with EDC and Vornado. There is yet a new plan for Piers 92 and 94, and they will be presenting that probably in December at WPE. As was mentioned earlier, we had a rep at the heliport press conference. Dale spoke on behalf of the board and called for the removal of the heliport from Hudson River Park, as Assemblymember Godfrey and Borough President Brewer mentioned. And then finally, you've also heard in reference to the Business District Recovery Initiative. And I know Jesse and Jessica were in attendance at that today. And more to come on that. So that's my report. And from there, we move into the business session. And I turn it over to Frank and Bert for the Business Licensing and Permits Committee, as they are first on the agenda.
Okay. Given the withdrawal of item 1, I don't see any reason to single out any of the remaining BLP items, which are 2 through 9. But I'm happy to answer questions about any of them.
Does anyone have any questions about items 2 through 9? Okay, thank you, Frank. We go next to Waterfront Parks and Environment. Jeffrey and Marty.
Good evening, everybody. 2 very straightforward letters here, derived out of full board discussion last month, and then just committee awareness on questions about park materials composting.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Jeffrey.
I think Joe had we've got a couple.
Twee has her hand up. All right, I see that. I didn't see Joe. I see Twee has her hand up. Go ahead, Twee.
Yeah, just a quick question on item 13. I saw the content of the letter, but the title of it says enforcement of fines, and I didn't really see that mentioned specifically in the letter, just something having to do with materials. Am I looking at the right item? I hope I am.
I think so. I think the question was about, are there fines and who enforces them? And then as it relates to materials and tree pits, what does the Parks Department do about that?
Yeah, you say enforcement measures, but it doesn't really say, I mean, is that supposed to be embedded in there, the idea of fines? Because that's the title.
Well, if you'd like to suggest that we add fines specifically, I could take that as a friendly amendment. I guess I just, generally, what is the enforcement as it relates to it? Maybe it's not fines. I think I was approaching it from a broader question, but I certainly would incorporate a question of fines as a friendly amendment to the letter.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Joe?
Yeah, Jeffrey, in line 17, about examples of the
same
recent,
letter, right, Joe? Same letter.
Yeah, line 13. I mean, sorry, I remember 13.
Yep.
I just want to suggest that we include examples of these include the recent removal of trees and concrete pavings of the tree pits in front of 445 West 35th. So we give a location so it's not amorphous. Okay.
Joe, the Parks Department could not confirm whether or not there were trees in that location.
I sent Google Map photos of the trees.
Okay, thank you. 445 West 35th Street, you said, right?
445, but if I could certainly have them sent again, Jeffrey, so you have them, okay? You can attach them, all right?
Thank you.
Christine.
Yes, on the same subject, I was not clear about what happened for those 2 tree pits. Who is really enforcing what?
Look, Christine, I can speak to it. I set up a meeting tomorrow with, on Friday with Jesse, the bid, and the owner and manager of the restaurant. The bid has agreed to reinstall those trees, and the owners have to pay for them.
Okay,
but there might be some fines that
I think this is great news, but it doesn't look like. Do we know whether DOT went out and whether Parks went out?
Yeah, I can speak to that, Christine.
Yes.
I confirm Parks did go out. They did inspect. They responded to our request. They've enclosed the request. Getting the details as to the outcome of that is still up in the air.
And what about DOT? Do we know whether they went out or not?
I am not confirmed with DOT whether they've gone out in terms of regarding the trees. My conversations informally with DOT is what they really said it was a parks issue. So.
Okay.
And thank you, Bert.
I have a question, Jeff. It's just for informational purposes. So New York City Parks Department doesn't compost the leaves, branches, goes to a landfill. But there are other parks in the city that are not under the Parks Department jurisdiction. So I'm thinking Hudson River Park Trust or the federal parks in Jamaica Bay. Do we know what they do?
Hudson River Park certainly does, as does Central Park. I don't know about Jamaica Bay. I don't know that there's federal requirements for it. So I certainly think we can refer to the park. We could refer to Hudson River Park.
Central Park Conservancy,
do you think that's relevant?
Does actually compost their trees and their leaves?
Yeah, they have a composter.
So even though it's officially a New York City park, they still do it.
Wait, did you say Central Park?
I thought that's what you said.
Yeah, they do. I mean, that's the Conservancy, right? That, you know, yes.
Okay.
It's way up. It's sort of.
We might want to make some kind of reference in the letter.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that.
Your way of doing it is not the only way it's done in New York City.
Yep, perfect. Thank you for that.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone else have questions for Jeffrey? All right, then I'm going to move on. Chelsea Land Use, Paul and Betty.
Betty's taking the first issue.
Betty. 128 West 17.
Yeah, I'll be talking about 14 and Paul will do 15. And this is a letter about the colored school number 4 at West 17th Street, 128. And this letter is to LPC requesting an individual landmark designation of historical and cultural significance for this site. Already a request for evaluation for this designation was submitted by noted historian Eric Washington, who spoke earlier in the public session in 2018, and he resubmitted it in 2021. This building was constructed about 1870, and it merits landmark designation for several reasons. It reflects the official racially segregated education for most of the 19th century. It also represents the model primary school house plan of 1844. The school was a cultural hub for the African-American families in Chelsea during the post-Civil War Reconstruction era. This school building is the only remaining colored school in Manhattan. The property is owned by the city. The building is currently vacant. Its last occupant was the Department of Sanitation. Colored School number 4 could provide an excellent learning environment to understand African-American heritage. The building's history could be linked to other nearby sites, which are listed in the letter, that tell important stories of local Black history. Designation of this significant site would be consistent with LPC's commitment to their equity framework instituted this year, specifically to recognize African-American history in the city. And also, there is a precedent for designating the site as a landmark. In 1998, LPC designated colored school number 3 in Williamsburg as a landmark. It is the last remaining colored school in Brooklyn. Paul and I want to particularly thank David, Pam, Viren, and Kit for their contributions to this letter. Are there any questions?
Marty, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm so in favor of this. I think it's a great letter. It raises the question of funding for all those could-bes. Do I remember correctly that Mr. Washington is trying to get funding, but there is no funding because it's not yet landmarked, and it's I'm jumping the gun here?
Well, he wanted, I think he primarily wanted to focus on the landmarking and then thought that that will be, the next step will be reaching out to organizations that are logical, and maybe the Chelsea community can also rally around programs and sponsorship. And, there are a lot of ideas of how that could come off.
I don't see the community board as a funding source, but
No, I don't see it either.
I think this is something that we should certainly keep track of. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions on item 14? All right, thank you, Betty. Paul, 15?
Item 15 is regarding the Gansevoort Market buildings that you've heard a little bit about this evening. Just for those of you who aren't aware of what's happening there, is those are historic row houses. Proposal was made to build an office tower in the rear yards of the row houses. Work began on the row houses, and suddenly the developer claimed that the facade was crumbling. It was a public safety hazard, called Department of Buildings and said, this is a public safety issue. And Department of Buildings came in and said, it is a public safety issue. We're going to have you dismantle the facades, which goes against the approved certificate of appropriateness from Landmarks Preservation Commission. In October, we sent an administrative letter repeating our issues and concerns from the application process. And then at our October 18th meeting, we met as a committee to discuss what we could possibly do next. And we want to send a letter issuing a stop work order until such measures can be understood what happened and what can be done to dismantle in place, to rebuild in place, rather than dismantling the facades of the buildings. We had, as you can imagine, lengthy conversations about this. Betty and Jesse and Lowell and I have met with DOB, with LPC, with the development team to try to get to the bottom of this. They haven't had very clear answers as to what happened. And the outstanding question is, how can it be that buildings that were there for 175 years suddenly started to crumble as soon as work began, but they didn't know that that would happen? So we're trying to tackle that. The reason this is coming up for ratification rather than full discussion amongst the board is because in our meetings with the development team in DOB and LPC, it was determined that the dismantling would be completed in 2 weeks' time. And we wanted to get a letter to DOB and LPC urging them to work to once the public safety measures were put in place, to stop work, figure out what had happened and what steps can be taken using structural analysis reports to repair the building in place. So we wanted to get the stop work order request out as quickly as possible. So it went to executive committee. Executive committee approved the letter to be sent. So it's up for ratification as opposed to a full vote. I think that's a very fast and cursory overview of a much more complicated topic. So if people have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I'm not seeing any hands. I think we're done with item 15, Paul.
Thank you.
I go next to transportation planning, Christine and Dale.
Yes, I suggest we bundle the 4 letters, which are self-explanatory, 16, 17, 18, 19, unless there are questions.
Brad's got a question. Go ahead.
Christine, real quick about the idling.
Yeah.
Should we make a point that they cannot go and negotiate down? You know, like you referenced some large companies that they do with their parking tickets.
I think we made that point somewhere, but
Maybe then I missed it, but I didn't see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we said that in the last paragraph. Maybe I'll make it a little clearer. Okay.
Paul?
Christine, I saw an article today, I think it was in the Gothamist, about fines increasing for illegal mufflers and noise factors from cars. They went from 150 to 1,000. I wonder if that might be worth mentioning, that the fines have increased for mufflers and noise. Why can't fines increase for idling as well? That letter might be, it might be too late for this letter, but it's a concept to include maybe.
No, I think we can do that. I mean, you understand that this letter is in response to a response we got from DEP from a first letter that Blake helped structure, as well as this one, by the way. Thank you, Blake, for that. And they said specifically that if it was under $2,000, they can change the rules. So we are exploiting that answer to ask for expanding it as a high. But I think it's a good idea, and I'll put it in. I'm fine.
Roberta.
Sure. I had some questions in regard to item 19, the Link NYC 5G towers. I wanted to clarify and just get a little bit more information. When I read the letter, it wasn't clear if Link NYC would require these 32-foot tall towers in order to expand the 5G network, or if they're simply proposing them because they don't want to lease from the lampposts, and that they could just lease from the lampposts instead of building these towers. Could someone clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, so Link NYC is proposing to install the 5G towers in order to fund the expansion of Link NYC to other neighborhoods. In Manhattan, they were relying upon advertisement, but it looks like in other neighborhoods, the advertisement was not strong enough to allow the Link NYC installation to be installed. So they came up with this new financial construct, which is we're going to add 5G network, but the 5G network is not really available to everyone in the street. It's not a free network. The 5G network is for the benefit of the operators. And then if you have a contract with the operator, then you get the 5G. So that is entirely a financial construct. Does that answer your question?
And then those would be the cell companies, I presume, like.
Yeah, exactly. It would be Verizon, the big operators, right? Verizon, T-Mobile, all these people would rent some space on those towers. They would put their relays, right? And then they would go and sell you, a more expensive contract, because now you would have 5G.
Right. So what you're saying is this resolution, the way I read it, it was like, we oppose 5G expansion in Manhattan. And what you're saying is that's probably not the case. It's just this particular revenue raiser for Link NYC. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
Eddie?
Yes, this is about item 17, the increase in idling fines. This is basically two questions. One is just the first paragraph needs the vote information, and who is Ms. Kelpin? Somebody in DEP? I guess?
she's the director of clean air and obviously idling at DEP.
Yeah, and then I think you answered the question about, because I wanted to know why wasn't the proposed penalty in the event of default higher? And you said you couldn't go above $2,000?
Yeah, what they told us, I mean, and again, this is in response to one of our letters, is that if it was above 2,000, we would have to have legislation.
Okay.
And, and it's fine, but we were trying to say, okay, just without getting to the legislation, maybe we could really increase the fines in a meaningful way.
Okay, I mean, I'm glad you're doing this, because I see idling of buses and vans all over the place.
Right. Okay.
Harry?
Just real quick, and I'm sorry if I missed this, Christine, in the letter, but back to Link, where are they proposing to put these towers? Are they replacing the existing towers with these taller towers? What they
are proposing to do is installing all these towers in all of the underserved, disadvantaged communities.
So specifically for us, what does that mean?
it doesn't mean anything for us. There is a potential that once they have done it in the rest of the disadvantaged communities, they would come back to Manhattan and do it, right?
Okay, so this is more of a general statement about Lincoln and this endeavor. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Wait.
For those of us who don't know, what is DOITT?
The Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications.
Yeah.
Okay, and because I didn't preface it with the item number, it's for item 19. So going back to item 19, on page, there was a page where, page 2, I think, and it's line 47. Did you want to say NYSHA there, NYSHA residents? Or did you mean NYCHA for NYCHA?
For line 47?
Yeah, on page 2.
Isn't it New York State
Housing Authority?
Is it CHA or?
I'm used to hearing NYCHA, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah. If you're talking about Fulton and Elliott Chelsea, it's NYCHA, Christine.
NYCHA being NYCHA?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
that's what I mean.
Oh, okay, but the last question I have had to do with the same page, line 60, interesting dramatic description calling these Stonehenge-like towers. I looked up Stonehenge. Stonehenge is actually 13 feet high, and this is 32 feet high, so it feels a little
not good enough. Okay, we'll remove that reference.
Okay, thank you.
Dale, your committee.
Yes, but I thought that considering that Senator Jackson's office mentioned that the ballot proposal that he sponsored passed, which is the one that that puts some state weight behind New Yorkers' rights to clean air and water, we might want to reference that in the idling letter.
Okay, yeah.
Also, the city's IT department, the acronym is pronounced DO IT, which is a pretty cool acronym.
Les?
Yeah, Christine, I had a question about number 17 and what the impact could be because of the restaurants on the streets in terms of the idling and cars and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's more people,
blocking the streets. Yeah. Well, what we notice in our neighborhood, in terms of my particular neighborhood, the complaints have been that the cars have been stopped idling, waiting because it's only one lane. So cars are parking really in place longer because they can't go forward because there's only one single lane. And in addition, there is the fire trucks and the ambulances, which have to navigate narrow passages in terms of waiting for trucks to move.
Yeah, but this proposal is specifically for bus and trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And when people are in a moving lane, they are not subject to those penalties. Only when they are on a parking or standing lane.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
I think that does it, Christine.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Housing, Health, Human Services, Joe, Maria.
I'll be doing 2021, and then Maria's going to do the new business, right, Nina?
Yeah, let's do 20. Let's do 23
yes.
with those. Yeah.
Okay. So 20 is about the proposed drop-in center for the old Janovic paint location on 9th Avenue between 51st and 52nd Streets on the west side of 9th. The Department of Homeland Services came to committee along with Urban Pathways, made a presentation, and the committee unanimously agreed that a drop-in center and the merit for a drop-in center in our district makes sense, but this location does not make sense. It says adjacent to 3 other homeless service facilities with a total of, I think it's 387 beds in the immediate 1-block area. So our letter details comments from the public, from the committee, and then specifically we asked the Department of Homeless Services to work with the board on finding an alternative site for this facility. Any questions? Paul first.
Jeffrey was first, then Paul. Go ahead,
Thanks
Jeff.
for that, Joe. Just, I mean, does the committee have an idea of another location? I recognize the desire to call to specifically request to work with DHS, but I do wonder if the committee has something in mind, given our deep knowledge of the district, where services already are provided, where something might work.
In the meeting, when this was discussed, we again sent the map of all the social services that were mapped by the board, and we sent that to DHS and asked them to do a follow-up meeting with us so we can actually talk about it. And we said we'd like to work from the map to make sure it could land in a place that doesn't have the concentration of services that this particular block does. So I think it's kind of an ongoing discussion, Jeffrey.
Okay.
Paul?
I think my question is a sort of a good follow-up to Jeffrey's. I'm struggling with the fact that last month we had a letter regarding the MTA site that we said, we support this, we support supportive housing, not at this site. Now we're saying the same thing. We support a drop-in center, not at this site. And I think we're starting to sound a little bit like we don't really want them. And so I'd like to see if maybe we can propose some language that would, rather than saying we don't want it at this site, say we have suggestions of other places. We would like this in our neighborhood, but at these locations, rather than saying.
Paul, the problem is this was just brought to us. It was the first time we heard it. And there was no sort of normal back and forth with DHS in advance. So we're at a disadvantage. The normal process is we'd have a briefing, there'd be a discussion, we go back and forth and talk about it. None of that happened. So therefore, it is the second time in 2 months because that's how the administration has been acting.
But so maybe that's the way we phrased it and said that this community is willing to accept drop-in centers and supportive housing. We would be more appreciative of a process that allows the voices of the community to be heard so that we can be involved in the siting of these locations.
I think that's a very good suggestion to note. That's our normal process with agencies that has not been followed. And therefore we're at a, yeah, I get it, got it.
Yeah, I just don't like that we're saying once again, good idea, not here. Good idea, not here.
Right.
And I just think we're sounding a little too, and I hate to use the word NIMBYist.
Well, let's not say we're NIMBY because the map on page 5 speaks for itself.
I helped build that.
Do not feel guilty for what the city has imposed upon us. That we welcome.
I know. I helped build that map. I'm fully supportive of the
That's
concept.
right.
Paul, the other thing that's worth pointing out on that is we're using the same language because we're practically in the same location.
Exactly. Same, almost the same block. But
So
I just want
I think
I'd like to think it should be tackled in a different language. That's all.
I also want to note for you, Paul, that DHS had not informed HPD of their proposal. So the idea that two agencies in the same administration didn't even talk to each other to make it doubly hard is crazy.
Can I just interject for a second? Noteworthy is also that CFH, Care for the Homeless Shelter on West 52nd, also did not know of the proposed drop-in center right across the street from them.
But that's a critical point, right? The departments aren't talking to one another. The other providers in the neighborhood aren't aware of this. The community board isn't aware of this. We're not opposed to this. We want to be involved in how these sightings are determined.
Got it.
Thank you.
Josephine.
Well, first of all, I just second everything that Paul just said. And I just want to add to line 96 City Knoll Middle School. They are housed with PS 111, and I think it's important to state all the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine.
Marty.
Thank you. I'm uncomfortable with this letter for the reasons largely that Paul said. I'm not sure that the conversation that you just had solves the issue. I'd be more comfortable if you were actually able to state an alternative location. The second thing that makes me uncomfortable, you guys, I saw actually two of you trekking down the streets with your clipboards, counting locations. So I understand from my own eyes the hard work that went into creating the page 5 document. It is a valuable piece of information. What that document doesn't tell us is how we compare to neighborhoods around us. That may be something that we need to do in the future. But without that kind of information, I don't know that our neighborhood is better or worse than others. There was a piece on Channel 2, I think, tonight about Long Island City having similar arguments and expressions of discomfort about supportive facilities being put into their neighborhood.
Marty, number one, we don't have the resources to go to every community board. The fact that we got this done is amazing. Second,
Yes,
the number of supportive housing units we have checked with HPD and with DHS, we have one of the largest geographic concentrations in the city of New York. Period. We have verified that. So it's not like we're making some wild outlandish claim. And I think this is an extract from the map. We'll also include the full map for reference, because when you see it, you will see in the district, the cluster of organizations and facilities at the northern part of the district in Hell's Kitchen, and not many in the south. So that's what we want to give a broader picture. I think that'll be helpful for the public and for the agencies to look at.
And Joe, it's not only the northern part of the district, it's a certain concentration right around
Of the northern
first,
part.
second, and ninth.
Mm-hmm.
It's a certain concentration in a 2 square block area.
Right.
Katie.
Thanks. A couple things. And maybe, Marty, this might help reassure you, but I'm hoping maybe to make some friendly amendments about some of the language in the letter. Specifically, I think the lines 47 through 52 and 83 through 89 are unnecessary. And I think if you remove them, it doesn't, like we say, well, we think it's a good idea, except, by the way, we're oversaturated. We think it's a good idea, but by the way, we're oversaturated. And it's like, hold on, stop. So anyway, I think if you'll just take a look at lines 47 through 52 and lines 83 through 89, I think it would help if we deleted those.
So let's take them one at a time, right?
Sure.
It is very important that we are basing our discussions and our concerns on context. And we cannot whitewash the context that we've been through in the past 18 months. The problem here is that the Department of Homeless Services, who sponsors facilities, has a horrible record of making sure they're well managed. That is an issue that's not going to go away.
Yeah, but Joe, I would suggest on that point, I think context is really important, but current context, like I think the facts that you just shared about the fact that like other places didn't know about it and what currently exists, that's important context. The fact that DHS dropped the ball during the pandemic, actually, I don't think that's useful. And it does look like we're just trying to get another slug at them. And I think if we want to be taken seriously about like, we're being reasonable, we're trying to be thoughtful, we really do want to welcome this to our neighborhood, but we just want to do it thoughtfully, that referencing what happened during the pandemic and about things that have gone back to their regular locations makes it look like that we're bitching about stuff that isn't relevant. Excuse my language. I shouldn't say that.
I just want to jump in. I just want to jump in as co-chair, right? Because I also worked on this letter. And the reason why I felt that it was relevant to mention what happened in the past is just because it shows a pattern for me that during the pandemic, and I understand it was a crisis, right? We all get that things had to be done quickly, right? But there at that time, it appeared that there lacked any thought about where the locations were, about where the shelters were being located, right? And to me, it seems that again, that same thing is occurring. And I think it's necessary and relevant to put that in the letter because of that. The main issue is the location, and the location because there's so many sites around it that already have issues, right? And I think that, I think, wait, Katie, let me just finish the last bit of my sentence. And I think what I find is that the letter is reiterating that point. That was it.
Yeah, I think the major issue here is we're wanting to hold an agency accountable on how it plans and acts. we have to note in our recent immediate history, its lack of planning and the way it acted created problems. So here we are yet again, and it's as if they have no memory. I will also note for the politics of it, it is very clear in all the discussions I've had with DHS that they really find this to be, they find the way they acted now kind of coming back to them. And I was quite interested to hear in our mental health forum that we had last week that all the providers mentioned that this was a mistake to drop 8,000 homeless individuals in our district and in the surrounding area at once. By doing this, and the politics of it, it helps us make it clear, you've made mistakes before, don't make it here. And although you say it's a slug, in the work that we've always done with agencies, you have to put out the slug in order to get a better response so they don't just keep rolling over us. It is not really harping, it's just a fact. And we heard that a lot from the public too. So that's why it was broader. I condensed it from an earlier version. So it just states facts clearly, you know?
Yeah.
That's the reason.
And can I just jump in?
encourage you to think about it with what Paul said earlier, that if it can be, if the language, if the tone of it can be changed a little bit, as I said, if you can say like, look, you didn't do a good job. You didn't talk to us first. You frankly have a history of not checking with us, except that then they're going to say, oh, it was during a pandemic. Anyway, I just think that there's a way of saying, and as you said, Maria, like, you know, there's a density issue, and we make that point clearly right now that there's a density issue, which is super important. I just would say, just rethink about whether or not we want to harp so much about what happened in the past.
And Katie, you're talking about, you said lines 42 to 52?
No,
47
through 52.
47 through 52.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
The mention about
specifically
the
a
COVID
paragraph
shelters.
about what happened during the pandemic. And
I know there were some hands up.
Oh,
sorry, Katie, you're still on. Okay.
yeah, sorry, just real quickly. And then I wanted to say in line 101 through 103, I think that's great. I actually think you should use similar language and replace lines 24 and 25, because right now in 24 and 25, you say something like,
Oh yeah, to make it parallel. Got it. Right.
Yep.
Right.
and also in line 101 to 103, you actually say, let's meet and talk to see if it can either be situated here or in CB5, which
Right.
makes it look like we're trying to.
No,
maybe-
but that came up during the meeting. That was brought up by.
It did come up during the meeting, which
Yeah.
I think
else, but I would just say maybe not in our conclusion. Again, if we're trying to make the point, we're willing to have it here, we should just mention having it here.
Yeah, it came up during the meeting. I believe I brought that up.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Katie. Christine. And Joe, just keep this moving. I'll be right back. I got to take my contact lenses
Got
out.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, one discussion we had maybe 2 months ago was that certain operators were better than others, and that we should have a scorecard for operators. And I remember a long time ago at the Port Authority, Urban Pathway was a horrible operator. So I think something should be said about that.
We actually, it's in there, Christine. It's in line 62. Hold on, I'll tell you where it is. Somebody brought that up. Oh, it's on lines 79 to 81.
What?
Line 79 to 81, and mentions their prior operating the drop-in center very poorly on West 41st.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Well, but that should come up much earlier, because what we are saying essentially is, I think what you're saying is that first we are oversaturated. Okay, but then the process doesn't work. And then you are giving us, operators, which are horrible, which are making a huge difference, because even during the COVID, we saw a huge difference between the operators. So I think we need to put them on notice that first, the protocol needs to be, as other people have said, but also the choice of operator need to be vetted by the community, because we have too many problems with bad operators. And that is what creates the problem about homeless, is if the operator is bad, everybody's going to get upset about the homeless. So they are not helping by giving us a facility which is managed by a poor operator. And we need to make that much bigger.
Can we say something like that? Also, DHS should establish a proper protocol for evaluating operators prior to choosing them to run facilities, something like that. That is transparent to the public.
Well, it is, but it's not good enough. I mean, it should be stronger.
Well, no,
we have our experience. We need to be able to say, we want, fine, you want to give us a, there should be a drop-in center. Fine, it should be managed by one of those three people. Otherwise, no good.
MCB4 to weigh in on operator prior to selection and things like this.
Exactly, because it's going to make a huge difference. If all the operators were good, people would not have the reaction they have to a homeless facility and a homeless center.
Right. Thank you. Betty's next.
Yeah, this is a good letter. I was in the meeting where we discussed this, and I voted for the letter. I was interested and sort of horrified that DHS uses real estate availability as a primary criteria for locating this kind of facility. And that made me think that I think we need to suggest to them the criteria and the almost the sole criteria was if there was a space that was available and affordable for them to lease. And that did not make sense for the community. And so I don't know if there's something we can develop from that. And they also said they need to be near people who are homeless, which is sort of a catch-22 because, putting this facility where there's a lot of homeless people or homeless facilities, that's another issue. So maybe either sooner or later, we should have something about criteria. And I think that Christine's point about the pathway, urban pathways is good point. The provider has to be one part of the criteria.
Well, we can suggest criteria that is not real estate market driven, because for the full board, the deputy commissioner actually said that they're players in the real estate market and they seek opportunity. It was the most shocking thing for someone to say.
I thought that was incredible, and it was revealing of how they operate in a sense that they hardly looked at what this neighborhood likes, wants, has to have, and based it almost solely on the real estate transaction. So I'd like, maybe you can put something in there about that.
Got the note. Dolores?
I was just picking up on what Betty was saying, because unfortunately I was not at our meeting this month. Our community was inundated because we had available spaces. Hotels were empty. Where are most of the hotels? They're here. And that's why, to Katie's points, I think that's one of the reasons why it is relevant to bring up the past, because it was opportunistic for all of these areas to be used for the housing of the congregate shelter residents. I think it's really important to stress the real estate, as Betty was saying, mainly because these opportunities are going to find themselves in this community more and more as some businesses are left, some spaces are open and businesses have failed. And it's not a NIMBY issue. It is simply, we had never noticed as much of the social services that have been in this community before because we had balance. We are completely out of balance. And I continue to say that month after month. That's the real issue. It's not about not wanting it here. It's not about Marty not wanting to, wanting to compare with other places. We've just lost our balance in how to manage this many numbers of folks that need social services. So I think the real estate is very key. Thank you, Betty, for bringing that up.
And as Christine notes, the well-managed facilities, you don't notice them because they're well-managed. It's the poorly managed ones that create all the problems. Roberta, you're next, and then Tina.
Sure. So I wanted to first raise some discussion that we had in committee in relation to the mention of Community District 5. I think part of the reason Community District 5 came up, and maybe we could add this in the conclusion, line 102, is that it would take the site potentially nearer to transit, and that might be particularly valuable for a drop-in center, where you are trying to get people from a variety of different areas around the district. I also wanted to speak specifically about the real estate drivenness of the issue. I wanted to push back a little bit on it being a piece of criteria. I certainly do not believe that it should be a #1 criteria to drive the siting of facilities. However, I think that it has to be an important aspect. Ultimately, real estate availability is going to determine whether or not any facility is cited, whether we like it or not. I think would like it to not be one of the top drivers, and I think that that's respectful. The other final thing, and I will stop talking after this, I wanted to note that Urban Pathways does operate a different drop-in center, I think just outside of the district.
On West 30th.
Yeah,
8th Avenue.
if you guys are familiar with it. I live not horribly far from it, and from my perspective, I did not know there was a drop-in center there until I looked it up. I think it is a well-run facility in that particular regard, though I do acknowledge that they've had problems with their shelter sites in the past. I did want to raise that because it seems like as a provider, they may be a mixed bag, but I did want to mention one place where I think they did pretty well.
So Roberta, I'm going to note that we'll take MCD5, put it in a footnote and note about transit, so that's not so prominent in the letter. Tina, and then Leslie.
Yeah, this is just in relation to operators. I mean, I think we maybe need to work on this criteria for also for operators, and looking at a variety of things. How many ambulances are called a day? How many police calls are made a day? How many ODs and all the rest of that? We have a mega shelter behind us, which it's not a NIMBY-YIMBY thing, it's just too big. And there are problems constantly. The ED, who I have a good relationship with, was just, he has these big giant galas and is highly respected in this community and very well known for a long period of time. His reputation almost overshadows the reality of the shelter itself. So I think if we can work together to actually create criteria in terms of how do we assess the effectiveness of a shelter, just in terms of its impact in the community. I mean, just as an aside, I'll be quick. I emailed and I said there are hypodermic needles, condoms, and sheets outside on the ledge. And his response was, they must be coming from the construction workers next door to you. I was like, I don't think construction workers would be throwing condoms over to your side of the alleyway, but that's it.
I know you're referring to the 25th Street, the BRC shelter, and Mr. Rosenblatt is well known at this board for being very competent, but also deflecting and having very thin skin and not able to manage certain things. So that's an ongoing issue. We had him in a meeting this morning, the very same issues.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to say, I live on this block, and Muzzy does have an excellent reputation. However, I think what I'm saying is we need to look beyond the reputation and actually look at facts and figures, at data, in order to make these assessments.
Leslie?
Well, from a practical standpoint, I live in that area where this is being considered, and we have a 24/7 turnover of police cars, fire trucks going in and out of these buildings that we have. And so adding another facility right within the 2-block area is overload for us. And so I was at that meeting, and I certainly reacted to some of the comments that were made by the city, and it's an overload. Pure and simple, it's an overload in our area.
Mike Noble's our last person.
sorry, Joe, I forgot to lower my hand. Everybody's covered everything. Thanks, guys. Thanks for waking me up.
Let me do a quick recap. We're going to speak how the process should be done and note that DHS did not talk to HPD or other departments in advance, and also not even notify other providers like Coalition for the Care for the Homeless around the corner. We're going to note on the in the section about urban pathways that that the board should be able to weigh in, and there should be a proper protocol developed for evaluating who to run, what kind of groups to run facilities. We're going to add in the city Lowell school, the paragraph about the schools. We're going to make the language in the conclusion parallel to lines 20 to 25, so it tracks the same. We're going to make that MCD5 as a footnote and talk about nearer to transit and other needs. And then we're going to suggest that criteria for selection not be driven solely by opportunistic real estate information. Have I captured all the comments? Great. Anything else on that one? Thank you all very much. It's going to be a better letter.
All right, you got the next one too, though, Joe.
Yep, the next one is the utility credit on the renewal leases for the Nicola 400 West 55th Street and Gotham West. These are both two Gotham projects. The board has written letters on this before, and I want to thank Katie for drafting this letter almost entirely. I did some polishing of it in order to make it clear. Our request is very simple. In this utility credit mess where they were given tenants were given utility credits and rescinded, and then there's a legal action, administrative action in front of New York State Homes and Community Renewal, that the credit was actually rolled back. The rescinding of the credit was rolled back at Gotham West for the tenants until that regulatory action proceeds ahead at HCR. And we're asking for the same thing to happen at the Nicole. We need to verify one thing in the letter on page 63. I've asked HCC to find out exactly when there was an action brought by tenants at the Nicole. I was informed though today that evidently our letters may be helping, because it seems as of December 1st, the rescission of the utility credit is being reversed for the Nicole also. So we're going to keep on doing this, get this on record. And it's a very sort of complex, crazy thing that Katie, it took months for us to get documents. They came in late, and then we had COVID and we couldn't do it. And so this was drafted really like in August or September, and we finally got to it in October, and that's why it's taken so long. Questions about item number 21?
All right, I think Katie, go ahead.
Hey there, just real quickly, I think that there are some, in the most recent edits or changes, there are a variety of typos. So I'll just send those over.
Please, yes.
And then, yeah, I wanted to ask you, like, do we have verification? Because I saw that the language was added saying that something had been brought.
That was reported to me by a tenant of the Nicole, so I added it, but it says XX on purpose to get the verification. I'm contacting HCC, their representative, to find out exactly the person and what happened.
Okay. And then I just wanted to ask real quickly, because I was delighted to hear, that it looks like it's headed in the right direction. But obviously this letter focuses on making sure that not only going forward, but that also it's retroactive all the way back the same way that Gotham West's was.
Yes.
So we just want to make sure that happens.
Yeah,
but
we asked them to be treated the same as Gotham West. So I think that's implicit.
Yeah. Just real quickly, I know that we had talked last month about the letter about Gotham's newest project, and we were going to add some language about this utility credit. Did that letter, okay, I just didn't see it. That's all. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, no, it was the small paragraph referring to this.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, any other questions on item number 21? All right, then I'm going to go to item 23 next, Maria.
Thank you, Lowell. So this letter is a short and sweet letter. Basically, at last month's committee meeting, someone from NISNA came and updated us. Let me just back up a little bit. In June of 2021, some people from NISNA and a rep from Mount Sinai West came to our meeting just to talk about the medical detox unit that has 34 beds. It had been closed completely since December of 2020. And it sounded like the administration at the hospital, senior leadership basically said that it was going to open. They gave them different time frames that it was going to be opening. It still had not. So they came before us and updated us on that. So this letter is just requesting, again, that they open the unit, also that they respond to our previous letter and request to come to committee to speak to us, and request that they participate as well as CB4 in a meeting with Assembly Member Dick Godfrey. And that is it. Any questions?
Any questions on this letter? All right, thank you, Housing,
All right,
Health and
very
Human
good.
Services. I'm going to go back to 22 now. This is the Statement of District Needs and Budget Priorities. So I'm giving this to Jessica as the Chair of the Budget Task Force.
Great, thank you, Lowell. Just to start us off with a little bit of context, you all know that each committee has had an opportunity to review capital and expense budget requests for the year ahead. So this is FY23 beginning July 1. And this process in your committees has involved reviewing past budget request items, seeing if they were funded or not funded, suggesting new items. In addition to that, we also did a brief survey, and Jesse, if you're able, I think we're just going to share the results of that survey here. Great. So this is a survey. This was just language lifted off the exact survey that went out in various different email lists and formats. The survey was open from September 30th to October 18th and had 454 responses, which that's pretty good. Next slide. It was a very simple survey, an attempt to just really get straight from the community what folks were seeing. So we asked for people to prioritize the 3 most pressing issues facing the district. Based on the 3 needs they chose, did they have any specific budget requests, and which best identifies you? I'm just going to say on the topic of the 3 needs you chose, while we asked, there's a little bit more text in the survey for those who took it and may remember. We tried to implore people to be as specific as possible so that their suggestion could tie to a budget request. Unfortunately, not everyone was able to do that. They were more focused on what is it that they see in front of them, like what is the problem. But there were quite a number of responses. I think over 300 took the time to fill in that criteria there, or the question there. And as an outcome of the survey, we'll be sharing back all of those specific requests by committee so that you can see kind of the content that most ladders up to the various committees to see if there are any issues that you want to dive deeper on. As you can see here, there were a number of issues that really came to the top. So this is just 2 different ways of looking at same results, just we're all different learners and see things in different ways. And so with that, you'll see that the top item is crime and public safety, followed by quality of life issues, followed by affordable housing and land use, social services and homelessness, and then, trash removal and cleanliness, and then social services and homelessness. Again, same thing there on the right, just reflected a bit differently. Before we go to the next slide, I'll just say that we really, as a budget task force, wanted to make sure over the really last year and this year, that while we have a lot of historic long-term priorities, that we, given just the significance of the events of the last 2 years, want to make sure that we were collecting feedback directly from the community, people who may not have been able to come to every meeting or be participating in the way that so many of our members of our board are, wanted to be able to provide this outlet to hear from people. And in fact, I think if you look back at so many of the discussions we had and so many of the comments from the public during our public sessions, the issues of crime and public safety, quality of life, sanitation, and homelessness, of course, were things that, if you were to do, we talk about wordles, these, diagrams that show how often words were mentioned just over our meetings. If you could do that using Zoom content, you would see that these were the issues that were so often brought up and addressed. And so as a committee, we really felt it was important that we address these issues and propose deviating from our historic three priorities, which in the past have been affordable housing, neighborhood preservation, and traffic and air quality. And in this case, not including rather the issue of public safety and in effect bumping down neighborhood preservation. So not to say that that will forever be our set of three priorities, but recognizing the moment we're in, the unique impact that the last 18 months and all of the budget, cuts and changes and the impact they had on our district, we felt that was important. Before we go to the statement, I do just we'll go to the next slide. Yep, thank you. So just to remind everyone, all of this hard work is that all these discussions and debates and really fine tuning makes a difference. These are the wins that we've experienced over in the last budget cycle. And I'll let you, I'm not going to go through them all, you can read them here. One of the things that is not listed here, but does have a significant impact on the capital, particularly the capital expenses that we've typically brought our voice to, is the work of the NYCHA working group. And so all of the things that would have previously been in a budget related to those sites have been pulled out. That was discussion by HHHS to do so, and recognizing that that work is expected to be funded and doesn't need us. We need to advocate, I'm sure, and be involved as our work group has been in other ways, but is not specifically a budget request. So with that, we have an updated statement of district needs to reflect the priorities that I mentioned. Each committee had an opportunity to not only prioritize their capital and expense requests, but also to provide specific edits to the document in the sections that are most relevant. And so this is, like all of our letters, a labor of love by many authors, and we do our best to reflect all of the various contributions, but of course, welcome edits and suggestions to that. And then beyond that, we have our expense and capital priorities. Again, capital probably looks most different year over year in light of the fact that so many of the, as I mentioned, so many of the NYCHA requests have been pulled out. We do continue to have affordable housing as a priority and have 2 requests in our top 5. And then also include other, obviously throughout both budgets, a lot of requests around sanitation and things that will help immediately address some of the sanitation and quality of life issues that we've heard a lot about. And we also, made an attempt to really look to the future and some of the issues that we know have been looming in our district. We've talked a lot about air quality here, and so made an attempt to really include at least in our capital list, an indication of our commitment and the need to address the air quality specifically here in our district. So with that, I guess I'll conclude by saying, again, lots of competing priorities. Ultimately, we want this document to reflect the needs of our district and what we believe are actionable items. And note that this list, at least in the format that it is provided to agencies, DOE or DOT isn't going to see the requests that are going to other agencies. They're really just looking at their list and seeing the priority that we have placed, the issues that are being sent to them for their consideration. Jesse, please.
I just wanted to make sure you were going to highlight on the amendment that you wanted to propose.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So one, we did get some friendly amendments, some text suggestions, but the most substantive issue, which is depending on when you looked in your Dropbox, if you looked anytime before yesterday, you may have seen in the capital request that the numbering was off. So you should follow the numbers, right? Don't follow the text, follow the numbers. So there were a few jumps. Our apologies for that. Sorting so many different lists can be complicated. The other thing, though, is that there has been a request. We did receive information from HHHS that was incorrectly ordered, and so the committee, in doing its work, essentially didn't have the right information to begin that prioritization process. So if you'll take a look on your budget again, depending on when you're looking at it, but should be number 17, which is provide adequate capital subsidy for senior reporting house at Hartley House, which if you've been around for more than a couple months, you've heard about all the work that this committee has done. It's an important site in the 40s. We've even, before we had meetings there to celebrate the great accomplishments that had happened, of course, in the before times. And there was a friendly amendment that both chairs of HHHS and WP agreed, which would include swapping number 17 with number 12, which is the dog run at DeWitt Park. I do want to bring attention for those who are committed to the renovation at DeWitt that they will see there is another number 9, which is ahead of that item, which is also focused on ensuring that renovation happens. So we're proposing a clean swap of number 12 and 17. Jesse, do you have more you'd like to make sure we cover?
No, I'm sorry. No, that's it.
Okay. With that, I think I'll open it up. I do want to thank the committee. Every year is very challenging to do this, but particularly when we change priorities and had so many things coming off the list because of the NYCHA request. And so I just want to thank everyone in advance for all their patience and for all their hard work. We'll do Hector, Betty, and then Paul.
Hi, Jessica. Very thorough report. Thank you. I'm a little concerned about the withdrawal of the NYCHA funding for the budget. When was that committed to? Because honestly, an announcement has not been officially made on a developer yet, and we don't even know if it's actually going to happen. It's not etched in stone. Nothing's been signed. So I'm a little concerned.
I had a similar question at the HHHS meeting. I'm going to ask if Joe, if you want to respond to that. I know you felt strongly.
Hector, because of the Chelsea NYCHA plan, there is only minimal capital funding in it, namely that which is already secured to the council. So therefore, we can't be going through the plan, seeking to make it work and have the entire renovation happen through the complex plan we all put together over the period of the 14 or 16 months. And then also say, we need to do all these capital items from the city capital budget. I think, if I remember, it's like $3 million or $2 million in the capital budget that's in the plan. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and so therefore that money's already committed. This is the question of putting in our capital budget priorities. We support the plan. We want the plan to work. I know it's not designated yet, but certainly RFP's been issued and aren't you at the final stages of designation now?
We are, but there's some pushback now at some point. We're running into some obstacles. So there's nothing it may fall through for all we know. So my concern is that, it falls through and then we're stuck waiting for another budget cycle if we do end up needing the funding. So
I just think it's really important that we can never have our cake and eat it too. We've put an incredible amount of resources into this Chelsea NYCHA plan, and I believe our community effort should be making sure it succeeds one way or the other. And if there are more capital funds coming through the Build Back Better, then we can also, as we noted in the plan, we can always replace things with other sources, right? That was one of our big issues that we made sure we put language in about it. So, but I think right now we have a good direction for Chelsea NYCHA, and I would not like to give a mixed signal that it's in the capital budget and in the plan to undercut one or the other. You know what I mean?
I'm wondering, Jessica, if we can add a footnote or a comment somewhere in the introduction to the statement of district needs that.
I was actually just thumbing through it because I think we do have somewhere in the narrative our commitment to the work group and wanting to see that through. But I will make sure that it is.
But make it clear that we've withdrawn those items from our request. Contingent upon exactly the plan going through, and so that way, if the plan for any reason falls apart, we can go back and point to it and say, "Hey, look, we told you this was our priority, but we thought it was done."
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Hector. And
thank you very much for consideration. Thanks.
Betty.
Yeah, here on the footnote.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Betty.
Thank you for this monumental effort. What does, I'm on page 9. What is CS. I probably should know, but what does that mean?
That's continued support. So those are things that we, and I'm not sure which page 9 you're looking at, but in general, the committee has the ability to say that this is something that's ongoing, either needs ongoing funding or just needs to be brought to the attention, but is not necessarily a new allocation.
Okay, and increased funding for fitness recreation equipment, that seemed rather general. I mean, was there a location for that?
You're on the capital budget?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
What
I think
number?
that's
My
WIE.
page 9, and it doesn't have a number. It's just, I don't want to waste a lot of time, but could you just?
We can work, I think that's a WPE request, and we can work with them to make that clear.
I sure
And then-
be happy to elaborate on that and send that language to Jessica.
Okay, and then the part where it says, I'm on my page 12, about the EMS station. It's, so there is funding allocated for it already? Is that, because you say continuing support? It's, the thing I wrote was, couldn't this be higher priority? We've been working on this for years and years.
Can I speak to that, Jessica?
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so remember, that's not funded by the city, that's funded by the developer.
Yeah.
So it's the outfitting of it that is continuous support. And actually, Betty, it is not moving because of budget issues. It's moving because of gateway issues and the administration's lack of attention to this site. And I will say honestly, the administration and unfortunately the council member, the developers reached out to the board multiple times wanting to move this ahead, and we can't seem to get traction from the administration as an important item. So it's not a budget thing, it's more of a paying attention thing.
Okay, I mean, I don't know, is there any way it could be worded? And I don't know, maybe it just can't be worded in a better way.
Well,
It's bothersome.
Maybe, Jessica, we can note the deal that the board and the mayor struck regarding the location and the build by the developer. So we can, because this was really for the outfitting of the station, not for the station construction.
Okay, I'm happy to make that change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and then Blake. And
I have three quick things on the the primary document, which is the statement of district needs. In section 5, it lists the various departments. And since public safety is our first priority, is there a way that we can move that heading from page 16 to page 11? It looks like that might be a template, and we may not be able to make those changes, but I'd like to see if we can make public safety our first list of requested budget items.
Sorry, I'm not sure if it's templated, and that's an issue. I would say that I think the discussions that were happening at the budget task force, and happy to have my task force members chime in if they feel differently, but we're really like a subbing out of neighborhood preservation for public safety. And to the extent that was number 2 before, that public safety became number 2. Even it is true that the survey results, call that out as the survey's top priority, but it was the feeling of the board that affordable housing should always be our number 1 priority. So so it was affordable housing followed by public safety, followed by traffic and air quality, which is why the document is at least currently laid out as it is.
Okay, all right. Since I'm not willing to serve on the budget task force and the monumental work you have to do, I'm not going to argue with the committee's decision on that. So thank you. The second issue is on the expense line items, line item 6 and line items 29. I think that they duplicate because the CLU there's a request for staffing to protect code enforcement on line 29. And within that, it also asks for website improvements. Chelsea Land Use took just the website issue out separately because the staffing issue had been denied in previous cycles, and we have a separate line. So I think that line 29 just duplicates the language from line 6. So
Yeah, we actually discussed that. We did discuss that at the meeting because I also got tripped up on that. And I see that 29 does reference the website, but the feeling was that 6 was about the creation of the web or the staffing for the website, which was different than the staffing for expanded enforcement and dedicated inspectors, and that those would be seen as different. And so the request was to keep them separate. But Jesse, did you just raise your hand?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think Paul is right. I think we just do, at one point, the two requests got combined, and they're actually two different separate requests. One is for staffing for inspectors. The other one is about website, updating the website. So I think if I would like to suggest that we could just remove the language about the website in the inspector request, because it is duplicative, and it's not going to go to the same division of the agency. So I think if we can just, if we're all comfortable with that, we're not losing anything. We're just clarifying it and we'll get a better response from the agency for it.
Paul, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks, Jesse, and thanks, Jessica. And then the other thing is on the capital budget, item number 29, where we're requesting additional sanitation equipment and trucks. I'd like to see if we can request cleaner trucks, like electric or natural gas or something, as part of the request, that those trucks be more environmentally conscious, and rather than having the traditional gas or diesel trucks that we currently purchase. And so maybe just an insertion of some cleaner vehicle language there.
Okay, I'm actually going to defer. I mean, Blake has taken a lead role on a lot of the sanitation requests, particularly those that came out of ACES. So Blake, are you comfortable with that?
That's great. Makes sense.
Paul, did you have anything else?
No, I just thank you. The survey's tremendous. And again, I'm glad I'm not on the budget task force. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Paul. Blake, and then Maria.
I think Paul just volunteered for next year's budget task force.
That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. And, I agree that I think you and the task force did a great job on this. I was wondering, sort of to Paul's point about the survey results, if there's some way to incorporate the fact that you did a survey and what the top findings were, since, I know it's not like a one from a survey to the budget request, but I think it might be nice for people who's filled it out to feel like they were heard and were part of the process. And, even if the top 3 don't align exactly, I think it calls some attention to those priorities.
That's a great suggestion. I love that. We'll figure out where that goes, but so everything has to have its place, but I think that's great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Blake. Maria.
Hey, Jessica, thanks. So I'm looking at the expense requests. I'm looking it over again. Maybe I was not fully paying attention the last time I was looking this over, because that went on for a long time, but I'm wondering about 6 and 7. I was wondering, so you said 17 and 12 were swapped. So the Hartley House.
17 and 12 were swapped on capital, not expense.
Right, I'm sorry. We've been talking about expense. I was still looking at capital.
Okay, sorry, I thought you said expense. Okay, let me get that back.
If I did, I apologize.
So 6 and 7 on capital?
Yeah, and so I was wondering, and I don't know if this is possible, or if it even makes sense at this point, given all the focusing about the survey and some other things, but would 12 be able to be swapped with 6 or 7? And I was looking.
I would say that if, and based on some, I would say if you want to swap 12 and 7, you can do it if you are interested in moving up Hartley to the place of just, and I'm saying this isn't like, people might hear this and be like, what negotiation is happening here? But I think based on a lot of the conversations we had, there was an attempt to keep, a set of priorities by committee and to maintain a whole ecosystem of various committee asks. And so I would say if the committee feels that, meaning HHHS representation and others, the board feel comfortable that Hartley House should be swapped yet again with the Sarah programming and MPLP, which is number 7, I think that, would be reasonable to do.
I think these are 2 things within HHNS, so they can go and
exactly.
And they can go discuss it and then swap it
Sure.
Yeah, that's
if they want.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and Maria and Joe are both nodding along as co-chairs of the committee, they will report back where they want to put Hartley
Right.
out, but they can only move it with another HHHS item at this
Yeah.
point.
okay. All right, Jessica, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
with that, I think you're done, Jessica.
I just just for clarity's sake, I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable with that. If someone has something to say about that, they should say it now at this point in time. Okay, right.
What?
Go ahead, Maria.
I'm hesitating. Do I really want to say more?
You're gonna end up with what you want.
No, don't say
You're gonna
anything.
end up with what you want.
Christine
You're
told me
ahead,
not to
Maria.
say anything. And it's actually,
You're ahead.
Christine, it's about number 6. And I was like, well, I feel a little weird about that being before supportive housing for seniors. But, I understand how this process works. Can't get everything I want the way I want it. Okay.
But I would also, just to go back to Jessica's main point, this list gets broken out by agency.
Yeah, which always
relevancy
helps me.
stands in a major way for who is being asked at the end of the day.
Yes, which is what I give into. So I get it. Yes.
That's why it's okay for a committee to request changes of their own order, because that list is going to go to the agencies they deal with.
Yeah.
But we're not going to entertain, especially at 10 to 10. We are not going to entertain reordering this entire list.
Exactly.
The work has been done. If anyone isn't happy with the order of the list, we have a single candidate for second vice chair for next year.
Exactly.
He will be taking over the budget task force process under our bylaws.
My Zoom is not working. I have to go.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jessica, it's been called monumental, and having done this myself, I know how hard it is. So thank you for doing it. You've done an amazing job, and thank the task force for the work. At this point, we are through the agenda. And no, Christine, what do you want?
No, I just want to mention that I presume that the statement of district needs is then going to reflect the list order. Because right now
yes, of
it
course.
doesn't, right?
Yes, so
that's
that is an arts and crafts, a serious editing arts and crafts issue, but we wanted to make sure we had it right. And then Jesse and I will work to make sure that it's all updated in the document.
All good.
Okay, so we are through the agenda. It is time to vote. Here is your first warning of the night. Get your roll call, your vote sheets in. That's your first and only warning tonight. Get your vote sheets in. You're voting now. We're going to go through the whole list alphabetically. You know the routine. Fill out your vote sheet while we're waiting to get to you alphabetically. And if you're at the beginning of the alphabet, do it after you've registered your vote. With that,
look, go to your website and open the sheet. Just do it along the way. It's easy.
Yes. All right.
Can we go over this quickly, because there are some interesting votes to be done? Just to be clear.
I think I'm doing roll call and Mike's going to take the vote.
What did you want to highlight, Jessica?
Thank you. For number 1, right, we're not voting on number 1, so you can say withdrawn. You have an option of withdrawn. And then I think, was it number 10
and 11?
10 and 11, similar situations.
10 is tabled.
Yeah, 10 is postponed. So you can say,
tabled.
Sent back to committee.
Yeah, it's sent back to committee. Withdrawn or sent back to committee is the same thing with this particular issue. Unless I'm wrong, for Bert and Frank.
Well, 10 says postponed in all caps.
I understand.
10 and 11 are coming back to BLP probably next month.
In this committee, when we say postponed or back to committee, it should have been uniform. It's not uniform. That's why I'm going over it now. It's the same thing. It's going back to committee.
Tisk, tisk.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask one other question. At what time did you send out the email with the vote sheet?
11:09. 11:09 a.m.
11:09 this morning, folks. Go to your inbox and you can find it. The subject line is reminder, MCB4 November full board meeting. There's a link there. There's no excuse not to do it.
Yeah, no. So just to be clear, I honestly don't think it's the issue of people not wanting to do it. It is about just getting it done all the way through and then pressing submit. So like I think people go through a long night. What I've decided, you go through a long night and then you forget to press submit. And so
you forget to press submit, right?
Oh my, your kids are gonna, Jesse, you're a wonderful father.
It's hysterical.
It really has calmed you. Oh my God.
Come on.
All right, now let's do this. Come on.
Let's do it.
Come on, let's do it.
Leslie,
Okay,
come
am
on.
I starting? Do I have the go sign from Lowell?
Go.
Okay. Okay, Sarah Appleton.
Yes, all.
Ted Arenas, I saw you here.
Yes to all.
Roberta.
Abstain on 19, yes to all the rest.
Christine Berthet.
Yes, all.
Gwen Billig.
Give her a second. I saw her.
Who was there?
Yeah,
She's muted.
Who is Gwen?
Muted. There she is.
Ah, here she is. Gwen,
Type it up.
unmute.
Gwen, I see your mute is on. Can you see that?
She's trying to find the unmute.
There
Here we
we
go.
I got it. Yes to all.
Great. Myself, Mike, yes to all. Viren,
Yes to all.
Jessica,
Yes to all.
Elzora, I don't think is here, right, Jesse?
No, she's not.
Dale,
Yes to all except those noted.
Marty DeCat,
No on 20, yes to everything else.
Paul Devlin,
Yes to all.
Pete Diaz, I saw you here.
Yes to all.
Tina,
Yes to all.
Wendy,
Yes to all.
Jesse Greenwald,
Not present.
Candace,
Yes to all.
great. David Holoka,
Yes to all.
Frank,
Yes to all.
Josephine told me she texted me, she had to hop off, but she's a yes to all. She'll hand in her sheet, she said. Peggy,
Yes to all.
Carrie,
Yes to all.
Blake,
Yes to all.
Bert,
Yes to all.
Chris LeBron,
Yes to all.
Jeffrey LeFrancois, just because I like saying it all the time.
Thanks, Leslie. I am present, not eligible on numbers 8 and 15, no on 20.
Oh,
Betty,
Yes to all.
Sarah Mills. Sarah, I don't think I saw her tonight. Did anyone else? I don't.
She's not here tonight.
Okay, Tina Nelson.
Yes to all.
Great. And Mike Noble,
yes to all.
JD Nolan,
Not present.
Not tonight, yeah.
Maria.
Yes to all.
No.
You're
Yes,
present.
thank
not
you,
eligible.
thank you, thank
Present,
you.
not
Yes to
eligible.
all, and I'm present, not eligible for the Gotham letter. I think that was number 21.
21, Maria.
21. Oh, shoot. God darn it. Thank you.
Alan,
Yes to all.
Brad,
Brad, where'd you get?
Brad Bascarella,
Yes, I'm here. Yes to all except 20. I'm abstaining. Thank you.
Twee,
Yes to all except 1, 10, and 11 as discussed.
Joe Restuccia.
Yes to all and submit it, Jesse.
Thank you.
Sabrina.
Abstain on 20 and yes to all.
Great. Dolores.
Yes to all.
David Solnick.
Yes to all.
Katie.
No on 20 and yes to everything else.
Kit Tollerson. I didn't see him. Did anyone else see Kit?
No, Kit had a school.
Oh,
thing.
he's out today.
Okay.
Yeah, he had a school thing tonight.
Hector.
Yes to all.
Myrna. I thought I saw.
Spoke earlier.
He's muted.
Sorry, no on 20, yes to all the rest.
Great. Rob Walker.
Yes to all and submitted.
Great.
Thank you.
James Wallace.
Happy belated Halloween. Yes to all.
David Warren.
Yay to all.
Leslie Williams.
Yes to all.
And Alice.
I abstain on number 20 and then yes on the rest.
And Lowell.
Yes to all.
Great. Did I get everyone there?
No, Leslie, just one correction. No on 20 for me. I'm mistake.
Okay.
That's Vera.
Yep.
I love this, yes, and submitted. Oh, that's a new thing. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that, Joe, I like that. I think that
We should do that.
You like that, Joe? That was tremendous.
Guys, if you all want to talk after we're done, you can, but it's 10 o'clock and we've been here for 3.5 hours.
Motion to adjourn.
And Jesse wants to go have dinner. I don't even want a motion. We're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Maestro. Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Good night,
Good night, everyone.